Okay, there we are.
Nice.
And just to make sure the screen capture's all good. Okay, wow. We might have something going here. There you go. Perfect. Alright. Well, hello stream. My name is MemeStiff. I'm once again joined by BlueWolf. RDZ could not attend, unfortunately, but we will continue on. We will soldier through. So, but we left off on
Best we can.
Woodrow Wilson's
Yeah.
the least controversial president in American history. I mean, honestly, like, you cannot pick like a less controversial president than good old Woodrow Wilson.
Honestly, yeah.
Now, do you have
Very,
any
very unproblematic.
do you have any opening thoughts on Woodrow Wilson? Just any basic.
To be honest, I don't think I really do. Don't remember a whole lot about the guy.
As I turn the fan off, it's like, I tell myself, I'm like, oh, I'm a professional at this, and then I leave like the fan on and stuff, so it's like in the background. But
I couldn't even hear it, so don't worry about it.
Oh, it's fine.
Yeah, honestly, I don't remember enough to judge him yet. So,
and now to pull.
Honestly, what you've been doing before was you're giving a lot of the history or whatever is helping me out a lot.
Yeah, I think my job here is to provide context and kind of build the opinion from there.
Yes.
Now I have to kind of pull.
Yeah, for sure.
I have to pull up my notes again. I have this whole ass thing here. Let's see. I think I have like literally like 5 pages of notes here that I've accumulated.
Jeez.
Handwritten, by the way, because
that's what I should have done. Yeah.
Okay.
That's what I should have done.
Woodrow Wilson. Oh my god, it takes up half the page. So this is clearly a guy that is not controversial at all.
Not at all. Yeah.
So a couple of anecdotes I have listed out for him. Let's see. The first one is he won due to the Republican Party split. Of course, the election in 1912 was one of the most chaotic elections in American history. Of course, after Taft's first term, Teddy Roosevelt didn't end up being too happy with his successor and decided to run under a third-party ticket, the Bull Moose Party, which was a progressive Republican Party. Of course, during that election as well, Teddy Roosevelt was nearly assassinated, but of course the guy who shot at him, the bullet ended up, I think, hitting his book or whatever, or his notebook.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, going through like 50 pages of a speech, but it did slow down the bullet. He still performed the 90-minute speech and literally acted like nothing was wrong, even though he had just been shot. So,
yeah, again, the legend Chad.
The legend of Teddy Roosevelt lives on. Now, of course, the divide between Teddy Roosevelt and William Howard Taft led to the Democrats gaining their first presidential victory since, I think Grover Cleveland. So you have,
I think so.
For context, this is big because in the last 50 years or so, it had been like total Republican domination in the presidency.
Oh, yeah.
Grover Cleveland was the only guy that even was able to sniff the presidency, and even then, he was only in there for 8 years out of 50 or 60. So this is total domination. This is when you really start to see. The shift of the Democratic Party more towards. This is when you're starting to trend closer towards that New Deal era, which we'll get to. Of course, and a lot of people, addresses racism. That's one of those. That's definitely one of those things that pops up every time anyone talks about him.
Of course, yeah.
Supported the lost cause theory, the idea that the South fought for a just cause, that they didn't really fight for that. The idea that they didn't fight for slavery, they fought for states' rights and individual freedom, which is partly true but misleading. Um,
Very much so. Yeah.
he also famously showed Birth of a Nation in the White House, which was a even at the time was a very controversial film, and by
Hmm.
today's standards is total white supremacist propaganda.
Yes.
So, and that is kind of a disgrace in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Um, so he was a Princeton graduate, lawyer. Later, he was a professor. I believe he was the head of Princeton at one point as well before he became governor of New Jersey. I think that's part of why he got into politics because it's a well connected
Hmm.
position. Let's see. Um, my notes are all over the place. That's what's weird about this. Because sometimes when I write these guys down, I write what I know about them first and then go in chronological
Yeah. And then you
orders.
go and look.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So
Hey, it works though.
sometimes. There you go.
Yes.
Let's see. So Woodrow Wilson expanded the government. Of course, a lot of guys at this time, like you see with the Republicans, are not particularly big government. They
Hmm.
prefer the government to stay out of people's affairs. Woodrow Wilson, however, was big on government. Um, and of course, he's the one that created the income tax. That is still very controversial to this day. Um,
Yes.
Now, I don't. I would admit I don't necessarily hate taxes because I feel like the government has to make money somehow. But
Agreed. Yep.
taxing someone based on taxing someone from directly from their paycheck is a little much in my eyes. It's always been
Yeah, I
a little
agree.
excessive.
Yep.
So, for example, when I
Always
get
been a
my
little sketchy.
when I get my direct deposit, for example, I'm getting
Hmm.
a good portion of that taken out before it even
Yes.
reaches me. So eh, it's it's not the best, but because
Yeah,
preferably I would get.
there's definitely better options.
I don't mind giving up my money later for taxes. Just don't take it from me before I have the chance to use it. Right.
Yes, agreed.
Excuse me. So let's see. Of course, World War One, try to keep America out, end up end
Hmm.
up eventually succumbing to it. Now there is a good argument to make with World War One that if the U.S.
Hmm.
had entered in, let's say, 1914 or 1915, that the war could have potentially been much shorter. I don't necessarily
Hmm.
abide by that. Uh, I think I think neutrality actually gave the U.S. time to kind of sit and observe what was going on in Europe and give them
Yes,
time to
definitely.
prepare. I
Hmm.
think the U.S. Army coming in 1917 was a much better prepared army than any of the British or French or German armies of 1914. So
Hmm.
that's kind of the way I view that. It's actually one of the things I do tend to look at Wilson more positively is his handling of World War One. Generally, I do think he did a
Yes.
good job in that because I
Hmm.
think a guy like Teddy Roosevelt would have just sent us right in with not really
Yes,
any foresight. I
he definitely would have. Yeah, and
I do
especially when it
imagine.
comes.
Okay, oh
Go
god,
ahead. Yeah.
yeah. So I do imagine him like pulling out a revolver, just pointing in the sky and being like, "Let's go to war, boys," and then just firing the whole 6 shots off, right? But yeah, and
Yeah,
honestly, Teddy Roosevelt would probably have led troops himself in some ways.
he absolutely would have.
That
Yeah,
would have been mad
which would have
bad.
been a problem, but
That would have
yeah,
caused
he
huge
if
reasons.
anyone would have done it, it would have been him.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
honestly, though, I do feel like that's probably one of the best choices as like the head of a country, especially when it comes to conflict of that scale. I think it'd be complete foolishness to just go in blind,
Yeah,
not knowing anything going on. So it's honestly probably the best bet to sit back and watch for a little
and
bit and just see what's going on.
in hindsight, a lot of our recent wars, that's kind of what we've done, and we've paid the price for it.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, but again, those future conflicts they'll definitely they'll be mentioned later on for sure. Because
Yes.
some of them I do
Well,
pick
they'll
more
get
apart.
plenty of
Mm,
yeah, plenty of time to talk about those
yeah.
because they're numerous ones. So.
This is also the guy who created the Federal Reserve, the Trade Commission.
Hmm.
Um, he was a pretty big antitrust guy. People don't tend to remember that about
Yeah,
Woodrow Wilson because when they think antitrust, they do think of Taft and Roosevelt. But Wilson
yeah,
was sympathetic to ending big business's reign of terror, right? So,
yeah. That's a good thing in my book.
um,
Yeah.
and actually, arguably, I think his might have been arguably more effective in some ways because he used the federal government to really interfere with big business. Um,
Yes.
more powerfully than any of his two predecessors did. Let's see
Hmm.
here. He also has the Espionage and Seditions Act. This is yet another one of those free speech limiting acts. So you see a couple of
Yeah.
those already with Lincoln
Yep.
and John Adams. So though,
Hmm.
and I think we both know our stances on those already. I'm
Yes, for sure.
not particularly high on suppressing free
Yeah.
speech.
Not super fond of those.
No, not
I mean,
particularly.
there are certainly some exceptions, but for the most part, yeah, that's definitely kind of a bad thing.
Another point to make: Wilson did pass women's suffrage, though I don't know if he is necessarily a true like feminist in any way. I think he kind of just saw the writing.
Yeah,
I think he saw the writing on the wall. Was probably tired of the woman protesting outside the White House,
most
and
likely. Yeah.
eventually was like, okay, fine, we'll let them vote. I,
Hmm.
so, um,
Yeah, that's probably what it was too. It was more of just giving into the pressure rather than actually believing in the cause.
yeah, I would tend to agree with that. Let's see here. Not hoping I'm not missing anything. Oh, he also jailed Eugene Debs, who at this time was the leading socialist candidate in the United States. Um,
That's
Eugene
right.
Debs
Yeah.
had previously run in 1912. I believe he had also run in 1908 and 1904, if I recall. But
Hmm.
Wilson had put his foot down, and using the Espionage and Sedition Act, he basically used as means to imprison Eugene Debs, who, interestingly enough, in
Hmm.
1916 ran for president from his prison cell. He actually,
Really? Wow.
him and his lawyer actually made up a campaign in his cell,
My
and
gosh.
I think
Yeah.
he was still on ballots, and I think he still got like a couple percentage points of the popular vote. So
Dang. Wow.
he was not being silenced by
Yeah, for
this
sure.
racist dude. So
Honestly, respect for him. Jeez, I didn't hear about that. That's kind of cool.
yeah, you also have to remember at this time, especially like 1919, this is the first Red Scare.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
this is
Which
when
is
being a communist, a
astonishing.
socialist is really scary. Like it really
Yeah.
scares the hell out of a lot of people. Um,
Yes, by far.
I mean, honestly, the Red Scare of 1919 is arguably worse than anything McCarthy could have ever done to the American people.
Probably. Yeah.
So
Yeah. Honestly, I mean,
there was a
it's what started the whole thing.
there was a
So.
real lot of paranoia around socialism and communism in the United States.
Yes.
Um,
Hmm.
let's see here. Of course, post World War One, the armistice is signed, and he travels to Versailles with his wife to negotiate the Treaty of Versailles with the other foreign powers.
Hmm.
This is where he brings up the League of Nations, the 14 points, basically his idea of a prosperous, peaceful future.
Hmm.
However, it sort of falls on deaf ears because the British and French are dead set on making Germany pay. Not only that, not only that, back at home when he tried to propose this League of Nations, the U.S. a lot of congressmen did not really want to join this League of Nations. With they did not
Yes.
like the idea of being in this international conference with other powers.
Hmm.
Um, let's see here. There's also an interesting story. This, and of course, some when I talk about some of the stuff, it's just general history. At this time,
Yeah.
Ho Chi Minh, who later was the communist leader of North Vietnam, had
Hmm.
actually been in Paris. Um, he was in Paris. I believe he was either in college or was visiting, and had and he had tried to talk to Woodrow Wilson about um about a Vietnamese independence post World War I.
Oh, okay.
He
Yeah.
had sent a letter. I believe the letter reached, like, maybe it was the Secretary of State or some sort of cabinet member of um,
Wow.
Wilson's cabinet. And however, if I recall, the member either completely dismissed it or never sent it forward to Wilson. I I believe
Gotcha.
Wilson never saw it. Um,
Huh.
Even if he had, I'm not sure how much he could have done.
Yeah,
But considering the
for
fact
sure.
that we fought Ho Chi Minh like 40 years later, maybe we should have given them independence. Um,
Right. Yeah. A lot of those things tend to come up again and again with stuff like that.
Especially in the 20th century. A lot of that stuff comes back to
Yes.
bite us in the ass.
Yep. Either we stick our nose in something we shouldn't, or we just kind of ignore things that we shouldn't ignore, and then it always comes back.
And it comes back to bite
That's
us.
a very common theme. Yeah.
Let's see here. Of course, we're kind of flip flopping around a bit with Wilson. He was also the only president to get a
Yeah.
PhD. Of course, he got his PhD from
Interesting.
Princeton,
Yeah.
which is interesting
Yep.
because you would think more people would have some sort of high level degree, but
Yeah.
most presidents really only have law degrees. Really, most of them
Pretty
are
much. Yeah.
proficient in law, which makes sense. That's the position
Hmm.
you go for. But
Yeah.
he has a PhD in, I want to say it was, maybe, I think it could have been biology. I don't remember exactly.
Oh, wow.
He
What do you know?
Hey, but cool for him, right? Um,
Yeah, that's pretty sweet.
of course, late in his second term, he ended up having a stroke. This is when he was traveling around the United States,
Oh.
trying to propose his or trying to promote his League of Nations plan to the
Hmm.
American people. He has a stroke. From this point on, he is basically inactive. People don't see him. He
Yes.
doesn't come out of his room. He is basically handicapped. Um,
Hmm.
and Edith Wilson, his wife, basically becomes the first female president of the United States in all intents and purposes.
Basically, yeah.
While she wasn't technically signing the bills, people suspect that she probably, at best, she was probably holding her husband's hands and making him like do the movements of a signature. But
Yeah. And that's what I would expect.
there are definitely theories though that she herself was writing the signatures, like forging her husband's
Hmm.
signature on a lot of documents. Um,
Dang.
so she really was basically the first female president, and you know,
Hmm.
and now while she doesn't have the official title, I do, basically knowing what she did, she really was president for the
Yeah.
last year or so of his presidency.
Yep.
And of course the stroke, and in the aftermath, I believe he died shortly after leaving office. I mean,
Hmm.
by the time he left office, he was already handicapped at that point.
Yeah.
I believe one side of his face was paralyzed, so he was
Hmm.
not in any condition to run for a third term. Not that I don't think
Yeah,
he
for
was.
sure.
I'm not sure if he was planning on it anyways. Um,
Hmm.
he's a polarizing figure. He's definitely one that did. He has some good. He has some really bad as well. It's
Yeah.
it's.
Which a lot of, in all fairness, a lot of these characters do, but yeah.
I tend to have trouble ranking him just due to the fact that he is so polarizing, right? Um,
Yeah, he really is.
because
Hmm. I mean, in that regard, I would say maybe kind of middle of the board,
eh,
or maybe just a little bit lower than that, but I'm not really sure.
I think he's below average, and of
Yeah,
course
because I think a lot of the bad really does outweigh some of the good stuff
it
he did,
does in my eyes. Um, Goodness, and a lot of
especially when
lists
it comes to like the sedition acts and stuff like that.
a lot of the lists
Not
I've
necessarily
viewed
good things.
have put him like down at F. I don't think he's quite F tier.
No, yeah, I don't think so
I
either.
should. I don't. I forgot to mention as well. He was the one that passed prohibition officially.
True,
The
yeah.
thing with that
Hmm.
though is I don't hold that against him too much because at this time prohibition was actually a fairly popular sentiment in America.
Yeah.
The idea of outlawing alcohol. So I do not hold that
Hmm.
against him too much. Honestly, oh man, I feel like if I put him anywhere, it's kind of he's a difficult one, really.
He is, yeah.
I probably would have to go with. I'll probably just have to go for like an E or something, really, E or D.
Yeah. That's what I was thinking. D or E.
Ah, God, it's hard though. The part of me thinks though that if I put him in D, we're gonna get flamed for it, and people are gonna be like, "Well,
True,
he's actually,"
yeah.
because you know the people on YouTube they're like, "He's actually the worst president in American history," which is not quite
Oh, of
true.
course, yeah.
Um,
No.
he's
I
definitely
mean,
not.
we have an entire tier for Buchanan, so
Yeah, he's definitely not
that's
Buchanan
definitely
tier.
telling. Hmm.
He did not see the dissolution of the United States. Um,
Yes.
but with that being said, goodness, I really cannot. I probably will have to put him as an E. I think I will just have to
Yeah, I
drop him
think
there.
so as well.
A part of me wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt and put him in D, but I can't pull myself to do that
Yeah.
because
Yep.
he kind of
I
is
can't
like
do that in good
He's kind of like
consciousness.
Andrew Jackson to me in a lot of ways. Racist,
He is, yeah. Yep.
antiquated, just generally people do not tend to view him in a very positive light nowadays. Um,
Yeah, for sure.
Up next we have what most people consider to be another stinker, Warren G. Harding.
Oh, yes. Warren Harding. That's right.
Now, do you have
Hmm.
anything to say about him? Initial?
Um, Not really again.
It's okay if you don't
Yeah.
because he wasn't terribly. I can't say he was terribly interesting or he was around
Yeah,
for too
he's
long.
definitely one of those like lesser not lesser known, but he was one of the less influential presidents, I would say.
Yeah, his impact on American history does tend to be fairly mild in comparison to a lot of his
Yeah.
successors.
Hmm.
Um, and don't mind me, I'm just trying to sort this list out so it doesn't drive me
Oh,
insane.
you're fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The
It's probably best to put them in order like that too, just so we don't mess them up or anything.
yeah. I mean, by this time I can kind of memorize them, but I would rather just have them in order so I like don't have to
Hmm.
think about it. Um,
Yeah, exactly.
Warren G. Harding's an interesting one. He's the first president
He
elected by
is, yeah.
he is the first president elected by woman, so I guess that can give him you could give him a gold star for that. Um,
Yeah.
Now he also invented he was really credited to be the inventor of the term normalcy. Now, if you've heard normalcy
Interesting.
anywhere else, at least recently,
Hmm.
it's probably Joe Biden's campaign. You hear that word a lot.
Yeah.
Return to normalcy.
Hmm.
You know, bring things back to normal. So,
Yeah.
in a way, Joe Biden might be the 21st century version of Warren G. Harding. Um,
Yeah, could be.
Now I don't know if that means that's I don't know if that's good or not,
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
it's
No
very
clue. I mean, they're completely different parties too. So, but yeah,
actually
I mean, honestly, that alone.
when I sort of think about it though, Warren G. Harding was non-combative. He was pretty to himself. Um, Definitely not a
Hmm.
guy that tried to stir too much up. Didn't try to stir up too much controversy. He does kind of remind me of
Gotcha.
Biden in
Yeah.
that way, actually. He is.
Honestly, yeah. Very.
He kind of is.
They identify with their party in name only. Their policies are probably mild enough to where they almost wouldn't fit the mold, but they kind of
But
have
they
to,
just
just out
yeah,
of necessity.
pretty much.
Hmm.
Um,
Gotcha.
so my notes on him are fairly short. Now, of course,
Yeah.
he was not in office for terribly long. He ended up dying, I think,
Hmm.
1.5 like 18 months into presidency. Um,
Yeah.
his administration is known for the Teapot Dome scandal. Now, this is the
Yep.
now, according to a few sources I've read,
Hmm.
that was he actually did not know about that. He wasn't aware of that going
Interesting.
on, which is possible
Yeah.
because by all accounts he was sort of he was non-combative,
Yeah.
non-confrontational. So he definitely could be the type of person to be taken advantage of by some corrupt cabinet members. So I could actually see that
Yes.
being possible that he did not
Hmm.
know. Um, he was, however, during his presidency, he was having extramarital affairs against, with other women. So,
Oh,
maybe
yeah.
that's certainly not the most faithful husband. Um,
No. Yeah, that's not the best example as President United States.
Definitely not the best example for the first one elected by woman.
Yeah.
Going back
That's
on his
right. Yeah.
wife, turning his back on his wife, and
Yikes.
you know, I
Yep.
imagine him close the door behind him. There's like some young girl in the bedroom, some like 20 something, right? And he's like, "Well, I appreciate you voting for me. Now take off your shirt." It's like, it's
Yeah, exactly.
just you know,
It was just a setup.
yeah. Oh yeah, it was all a ploy for him to get elected, right? Just to
Yeah.
fuel his fantasy, right? But
Yeah,
he,
honestly, as far as things go in America, that would be one of the things that would not surprise me very much.
not at all. Um,
Yeah.
Warren G. Harding, I found this interesting. I didn't know this until I researched him. He actually had a fair bit of mental health issues.
Really
Yeah, so he was
interesting. Yeah.
susceptible to nervous breakdowns. So
Gotcha.
this is a guy who I imagine probably had a good bit of anxiety. Probably could have had just probably could have had some sort of undiagnosed po- possibly ADHD potentially, really.
Yeah.
Um,
Hmm.
so of course not much was known about that back then, but
Yeah.
he was definitely susceptible to fits of where he would completely break down, and
Yeah.
sometimes he would do it in front of
Interesting.
people, and it would freak them the hell out.
Oh, of course. Yeah. Especially when you don't have
Especially
much knowledge
back
of
in that
anything
day.
of that nature.
Back
Yeah.
in that day, it was
Yeah.
not
That.
nearly as well understood. Let's see
Hmm.
here. Um, there's not too much more on him really. He was fairly again, he didn't really get to do a whole lot in his presidency. He wasn't around for terribly long. Even then though, he's really the definition of a moderate. He's really a guy that is he he sort of is in some ways it sort of seems like he doesn't want to take a stance one way or another in fear of upsetting
Yeah.
people. Um
Yep.
which I think
Which
could be
honestly,
a good
it
trait.
can be. Yeah, it can be good and bad. It really just depends on the situation.
Yeah, it's he's an interesting one. Um and the issue I have with him is I don't know if I respect him as a person in the way I would like Jimmy Carter, for instance, because of his
Yeah.
extramarital affairs. So like,
Yeah.
because
Exactly.
on the surface he does seem like a guy you could probably chat to and maybe have a beer with, but does not. When you read more about him, it does not seem as much. Um,
Yeah.
uh, honestly, he's probably an E as well. He's
Yeah. I think
he's
so.
probably in that
There
same.
wasn't a whole lot of good that really happened.
Yeah, he was just kind of timid, and there wasn't much substance to him.
Yes. And honestly, I mean, being timid isn't necessarily a bad thing if you, I guess, approach it more of like that kind of cautious aspect, like if you're weighing your options with big decisions and stuff like that. But for him, it was just kind of a whole lot of nothing. Like, it was kind of unwarranted.
it, it's good to be a mediator sometimes, but there are times when you do have to take a stand for what you believe in, and I'm not sure if he would have. I'm
Absolutely.
not sure if
Yeah.
he. I'm not. Granted, I know he was not really quite tested in a way, but
Hmm.
I'm not
True.
sure if he
Yeah.
would have stepped up to the challenge per se.
Yeah. Most likely not. Because I do think it's a very important thing for like a leader figure to be able to do that at certain times. It's not always needed, but it's definitely something that you need to have the option to do when it's required.
I agree. Um, Up next we have his vice president, Calvin Coolidge.
Calvin Coolidge, that's right.
Definitely one of the coolest names in American history. I get it. No.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. And that's when the video gets spam disliked and everyone clicks off of it.
Yeah. That's
Coolidge,
okay. It's worth it.
Coolidge is an interesting one though. He's definitely
He
more
is,
interesting than
yeah.
Harding. Um,
hmm
he's similar to Harding in the way that he is fairly reserved.
Yeah.
Of course he had the nickname Silent Cal. So this is a guy who
Yes.
is not he's not a socialite. This is a guy who is not, going to the dinner parties and, chatting it up with the cronies, right?
Yeah.
Just generally pretty quiet, pretty reserved. Just really humble. We could probably use that in the White House again in some ways. We could use a bit of humble pie.
Honestly, yeah. That's a very underrated trait that people have. It's something that we definitely need more of nowadays.
Having humility would be very good to have in a
Yeah,
president.
absolutely.
Yep. Of course, Calvin Coolidge is he's really the one who resides over the Roaring '20s. This is a time of great economic boom and prosperity in the United States. Oh, how long that would last. He was really a guy who proposed laissez-faire economics, which is the idea that the government does not interfere with the economy. So this is a small government guy. This is someone who does not want to have the government interfere in everyday life. So really,
which honestly,
he's really
not
a
bad
classic.
thing.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, he's really a classic libertarian.
Yeah.
So a guy who's fairly moderate, but is not big on authority, not big on government authority.
Yep.
I will say, however, his limited government stances did hurt prohibition, because prohibition made it very hard for prohibition to be enforced by the federal government, since he was kind of a hands-off, since he kind of held the hands-off approach. So that did have unintended consequences with prohibition, though that was a train wreck regardless of him or not. But something just to note with him. Let's see. Of course, nicknamed Silent Cal. There's a great story about Coolidge where at one of those dinner parties aforementioned, a lady had dared him to say more than 3 words at the party. He replied with the quote, "You lose," and never spoke the rest of the night. So this is
Dang.
Again, not a big talker. This is a guy who who speaks what he wants to say, what he wants to say, and shuts up, right?
Yeah, honestly, not a bad thing.
No, not at all. I actually kind of have respect for it in a lot of ways.
I do as well. Yeah, that's honestly another thing we could use is someone who does their job and just kind of that's it. They don't have to go in with theatrics and all that kind of stuff. They just kind of tell it like it is, and that's all they really need to do.
Yeah. I will say, from doing research on Coolidge, this is like libertarians' favorite president of all time. Just the idea of being like a quiet, humble guy who is small government. Libertarians love this guy.
Yes, they do.
So they probably love him maybe more than he should be loved, because while I do have a good opinion on him, they probably worship him a little too much, and it is concerning.
Most likely, yeah. Yeah. I mean, honestly, any sort of people who hold politicians to that kind of pedestal kind of thing, anything in that regard is a little concerning in my opinion.
I would tend to agree. And I think our boy in chat is asking about Teddy Roosevelt. We ranked him S tier, so he is here.
Yes.
Congratulations. We had already passed him though.
Yeah. He was pretty goated. Yeah.
Yeah. let's see here. He was frugal, so this man
Hmm.
lived. This man lived like on a farmhouse, like a minor farmhouse.
Nice.
So despite him having
Hmm.
a relatively decent amount of wealth, he was not someone. He wasn't living in some lavish mansion. You know, he was living
Yeah.
on like a 2-story farmhouse that he had bought with his own money. So definitely
Hmm.
a guy. Again, it kind of speaks to his personality.
Yeah.
He has a great quote as well, regarding why he is so quiet. He replied to a reporter, "If you don't say anything, you won't be called on to repeat it." So
Ooh, yeah.
I know
Yeah.
I like that
He's
quote
not wrong.
actually.
Yeah. Me as well.
Um, let's see. His wife Grace Coolidge was basically the polar opposite. She was really the outgoing one of the family. Um,
Oh, yep.
and honestly, at least in history, I do tend to find opposite couples tend to work better.
Yeah.
You know,
They definitely do. You need some sort of compliment.
yeah. So she was the outspoken, socialite type of person, which I think was
Hmm.
actually, and I think she was actually probably instrumental in some ways to gain him to the presidency.
Probably, yeah.
Being able to invite the wives of like important men over and like having tea
Yeah.
with them and stuff. Probably connections. Um,
Hmm. I would imagine so. Nice.
so he also let's see here. He also ended the Boston police strike. I believe that was when he was governor of Vermont. Um, or either the governor or he was I think he was vice president at the time. That would or governor of
Hmm.
Massachusetts. Sorry, he was born in Vermont but raised in
Gotcha.
Massachusetts. That would make more sense since it's in Boston. Boston
Yeah.
police strike. Basically, the whole police force or majority of the police force went on strike due to how they felt, where they felt that their wages were too low. Of course, this is Coolidge in
Yep.
office, so this is not a guy who is probably paying federal workers a ton of money.
Yeah, definitely.
Public service jobs are probably not getting uh, terribly high pay. Um,
Yeah, most likely.
his way of ending the strike, fire them all. So this is the classic anti-union, like libertarian, like just the idea of this guy, like, it's like, if you don't, if you're gonna rebel, we're just gonna fire you, right? So
Hmm. Yeah, exactly.
um
Yep. Which honestly, not that doesn't give a lot of respect in my book.
yeah, yeah, this in today's standards, I think a lot of more people nowadays are pro union, so that does not
Yes, I would hope so.
that does you could argue that has not aged very well.
Yeah,
Let's see here.
definitely.
He also had a pet raccoon.
Mm,
It was gifted from him from a man in Alabama. I believe it was Alabama,
nice.
somewhere in the deep south. They were basically like, "Here we go, cook it and have it for dinner." His wife Grace instead was like, "This thing is cute. We're going to keep it as a pet." So they end up having a pet raccoon.
That's awesome.
Now, how
Huh.
you domesticate a raccoon, I do not know how, but they
Hmm.
managed. Um,
Interesting.
so they had a pet raccoon running around the White House, and apparently every once in a while the raccoon would get out of the White House grounds and would just wander around D.C. and people could recognize
Nice.
it because they would have the collar, because they have the distinctive collar on it.
Yeah.
So people would just see
Oh,
this
that's
raccoon
funny.
like eating shit out of the trash and be like, "Oh, well, I'm sure the president will come pick up their pet in the morning."
That's kind of hilarious. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So he also restricted immigration. Again, this is a small government guy. He probably did not want to pay
Yeah.
for. He probably did not want to pay border patrol.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, definitely.
let's see here. He also helped sign the Kellogg-Briand Pact, which was basically a pact between European powers in the United States, that basically a declaration of peace.
Hmm.
That did not last terribly long either. But
Yeah.
that was really actually about the extent of his foreign policy. He was mostly a domestic policy president. Now, granted,
Nice.
at this point in history, there was not a lot going on foreign
Hmm.
policy wise that was too crazy. Though, again, in a couple of years, that really picks up. Um, let's see here. An interesting one as well. He signs the Indian Citizenship Act into
Hmm.
law. So Indian Citizenship Act of 1924. So he did grant Native Americans citizenship,
Yeah, that's huge. Yeah,
which
that's a good thing.
which is big for Native American rights. Um,
Yeah, for
in
sure.
fact, I want to search up the picture, but he actually, I think, got crowned. I think he got crowned by the Sioux. I think
Oh wow.
they gave him a headdress and basically had crowned him or declared him like chieftain or something like that. But
Gotcha. Yeah.
if you want to pull up the stream, I do have a picture of it of him wearing the
Oh,
headdress.
yep, yep. Yeah, I
It's
got it
actually
pulled
in
up
the
right here.
funny enough, it's in the thumbnail of our video. Is one of those funny
Oh,
images I found.
nice.
So
Yeah.
he has images of him wearing the Sioux, the Sioux tribe headdress. So
Yeah.
a very
That's kind of cool. Interesting. Yeah.
I will admit, as much
Interesting.
as I love it, it is kind of cursed to watch this like
It is very cursed. Yeah.
old white dude walking around with a Indian headdress, right? So
Yeah. There's something about it that's, yeah,
yeah.
definitely weird, but yeah, I see.
Um. So again, I do tend to like Coolidge.
Yeah, I think
I
so
don't
as
know
well.
if I love Coolidge, but I do like him. To
Hmm.
me, he is a B tier.
Yeah, I agree. That's a good ranking for him.
Okay, well that settles the Calvin Coolidge question.
Yeah.
It's crazy because looking at the list, him going B tier puts him in like the top like 20, like basically like 25% of presidents. Because
Yeah, for now. Yeah.
a lot of our guys, like a majority of them, are ranked C or lower, which is kind of alarming.
Yeah.
Public
Yeah.
opinion
That
is
definitely
not
seems
great.
to be, yeah, definitely seems to be a trend for sure, though, with other videos as well, this kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's scary stuff for sure. But
Yeah.
let's see. Up next, we have Herbert Hoover.
Mm.
Now, he is actually one of the more interesting guys I've actually looked up.
Yeah.
I actually have it listed. He is actually not named after the Hoover vacuum. So I
Nice.
did actually believe that for a long time that the Hoover vacuum was named after
Yeah.
Herbert Hoover. The Hoover vacuum is actually named after the inventor of the vacuum, which was like I think his name was James A. Hoover or something like that. So good for
Oh,
him.
interesting.
It
Yeah.
just so happened that
What do you know?
the home portable vacuum came out around the same time as Herbert Hoover's presidency. So
Hmm. Yes.
he was
What do
born
you
an
know?
orphan. This is an interesting thing. He
Really?
was a poor orphan who ended up attending Stanford. Was actually the first inaugural class of Stanford University.
Dang.
So end up majoring in geology. Graduated from
Oh, yeah.
Stanford. Went overseas. Went into the mining industry. Quickly rose the
Hmm.
ranks and became basically a mining mogul in some ways, like a mining business mogul.
Dang. Yeah.
He ended up visiting China in 1900, right
Hmm.
around the time when the Boxer Rebellion was taking place in China.
Oh,
So
yeah.
dude was traveling the world and seeing things for sure.
Yes. Yeah, definitely.
Let's see here.
Dang.
Yeah, he worked in 5 different continents, which I believe was North America, South America, Asia, Europe, and Africa, if I recall.
Nice.
So this dude got to do some fun things in his young life.
Yeah.
He spoke Chinese fluently due to him working there.
Hmm.
However, he was also a humanitarian as well. I don't have it listed on my notes, but when I did further research, I did find that out. He was a humanitarian.
Yep.
He used his wealth during World War I to help feed the starving Belgian people during the invasion of
Nice.
Belgium in 1914. So
Yeah.
he's end up I think he was end up giving Belgium like 2 million, I think, sacks of flour or something like that, which probably
Hmm.
which almost directly would, you could argue, save thousands of lives.
Oh yeah.
So this is definitely humanitarian. Um,
Hmm.
you could
That's a really good thing in my opinion.
Yeah. So he did tend to, based on his background, he tended to use wealth and would give it back to people who needed it. Um,
Hmm.
Due to his successes and due to his influence, he ended up becoming a prominent political figure in the Republican Party. I believe he was Secretary of State under Coolidge. I could be wrong. I know he was in his cabinet. Um,
Hmm. He was, oh yeah, he was Secretary of Commerce under Harding
Commerce.
and Coolidge.
Yeah. Okay.
Nice.
Good. Good.
So yeah, he was cabinet member.
Um, he was fairly popular in his party. People liked him.
Hmm.
He was charismatic. He got along with people. Um, However, unfortunately, he is remembered for one thing, and that's the Great Depression. It just so
Yeah.
happened the Great Depression happened during his presidency. Do I think it is his
Hmm.
fault? Not really.
No, I don't believe it was either.
But does he get all the blame for it? Just about. Um,
Yeah,
you
unfortunately.
you could make the claim that Calvin Coolidge is at fault for the Great Depression, which he is partly to blame. You could definitely blame some of his limited government policies, though.
Yes.
To be honest, the Great Depression was basically everyone's fault. It was the bank's fault for
Basically, yeah.
giving out loans to everyone. It was the government's fault for realizing that giving out loans to everyone was a bad idea. It was the Earth's fault for having a massive drought in the 1920s. So farmers had a
Oh
terrible
yeah.
time.
Yep.
And
It was a
so
culmination of
it was
lots and lots and lots of things.
yes. And I'm not an expert on economics, so I won't go further into any more reasons. Because I don't want to end
Hmm.
up spewing BS. Um.
Yeah, same here.
So of course he oversaw the Great Depression and the Dust
Hmm.
Bowl, not to mention, because this was a really
Yeah,
fun
that's
time to
right.
be an American.
Oh yeah.
Um, he created the Reconstruction Finance Corporation, which which included a bailout stimulus for businesses.
Hmm.
So this was
Gotcha.
not the first time. So 2008 was not the first time where businesses were bailed out, or banks and
Yeah.
whatnot. Um, he put in the Hoover Dam project to try to create jobs and
That's
boost the
right. Yep.
economy. So Hoover Dam, that was his idea.
Nice.
Hoover Dam, one of the great engineering marvels of modern history.
Oh
It
yeah. By far.
plus the fact that it was only completed in, I believe, like 4 years, 3 or 4 years, which
That's
is
just
really fast.
absolutely ridiculous. Especially considering it was in during the 20s, like 20s and 30s. Just nuts.
Yeah. So these guys were, and these workers were risking their lives, for just a couple of dollars, right? Just so they could
Yeah,
feed their
it's
families.
ridiculous.
Yeah, crazy times in American history. I believe Hoover might have started Mount Rushmore, though I think that could be FDR. But it was around that time where Mount Rushmore's project comes into
Yeah.
play. Um, so Hoover did try to stimulate the economy. It did not work. Um, and by this time, he is really despised by the American people. Um,
Hmm. Unfortunately.
yeah, and the little shanty towns that end up spawning up are called
Yeah.
Hoovervilles. This is where you hear about
Oh
Hoovervilles.
yeah.
So
Hmm.
basically, he ended up being a laughing stock. People end up hating him. 1932 comes around, people look at him and they're like, "There's no way he's going to get reelected."
Yeah,
And
of course.
and and the legacy of Herbert Hoover and the Great Depression is so bad for the Republicans.
Yeah.
We don't get another Republican president in office until Dwight D. Eisenhower. And Eisenhower wasn't
Wow.
even really a
Dang.
Republican. So the first real Republican that got into office post Hoover was Richard Nixon.
Hmm. Yeah, that's a little ways yet.
Yeah. So
Jeez.
kind of like in the late 1800s where the Republicans held all the cards, you will see a
Yep.
reversal of fortune where the Democrats come in and really gain a lot of power.
Oh yeah. Yep.
Um I Hoover, I like him as a person. I like his humanitarian
Hmm.
efforts. I like his story of how he came from basically nothing.
Yeah.
Um
That's always a good thing.
he tried, so I give him A for effort, but it did not work. I probably will give him a D.
Yeah, I think so as well.
Unfortunately, we can't go just based off of they tried on their attempts. His attempt
Yeah.
failed, so we will have to deduct it for that reason. As much as I would like to be
Hmm.
more sympathetic to him.
Yeah. I mean, socially he was great, but with some of that stuff, it's just kind of unavoidable. And there are definitely some things that, factor in that you can't necessarily do. So makes sense, yeah.
All right. Let's see here. We got a very minor figure in American history, Franklin Delano
Yeah.
Roosevelt.
Yeah, I don't know if I've ever heard of this one.
No, he's kind of obscure. I don't really know all that much about him. I
Hmm.
don't know if you have any notes written down about him because he's pretty irrelevant in the grand scheme of American
Oh
history.
yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Um, and anyways, he the first thing I have listed on here, it's really cursed how I list this stuff sometimes because again I go based on what I know and then I list what I don't know so on some of these.
Yeah.
So the first thing I have listed is that he married his sixth cousin Eleanor.
Real.
So
Oh, interesting.
right off the bat, I'm basically going the Sweet Home Alabama route to roasting this guy.
Yeah.
Take that as you
Yeah,
will.
that's definitely not a not a great start for his reputation.
No, I did.
Sheesh.
I came in guns blazing. So,
Yeah.
um, Eleanor Roosevelt though
Hmm.
is probably the first lady, maybe beside like Edith Wilson, who was very involved in the White House.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
this is where you start to see the first ladies really get involved. And later on you'll see like someone like Michelle Obama who's really involved and really out there, right?
Yeah.
Going on
Yep.
speaking tours and promoting bills and whatnot, which is something they didn't
Hmm.
really do before. So good on them. Good on Eleanor, right?
Yeah. Good thing.
Um,
Good thing.
let's see. Of course, when you think Franklin Roosevelt, you think of the New Deal. I almost call it the Green New Deal because I'm thinking about today's politics. The so,
Not
so
there yet, but yeah.
FDR's New Deal is basically it's basically a socialist experiment in the United States.
Hmm.
Because call it what you like, it was basically democratic socialism in the United States,
Yeah, for sure. Yep.
which I always found funny that there were so many people paranoid about communism and stuff when communism was basically being used to prop us out of the Great Depression. But
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of the only thing that really could get
well,
out of such a
collectivize it.
massive rut like that.
Yeah, you in some ways you needed the collectivization and the huge government involvement to get
Yeah,
out
definitely.
of the depression. Um,
Hmm.
let's see here. So in his early life, he was born into the prominent Roosevelt family. Of course, this is stemming from he was the fifth cousin of Teddy Roosevelt. So he had connections from being born out of the womb, basically.
Nice. Yeah.
Um, in his in adulthood, he actually ended up contracting polio, which is extremely rare because polio is
Yes.
usually a childhood
Nowadays, yeah.
disease.
Hmm.
Because of that, there are some doctors who do believe that it wasn't polio, but in fact it was Guillain-Barré syndrome. So
Interesting.
Guillain-Barré
Hmm.
syndrome is basically, I believe that it's some sort of paralysis. It's some sort of paralysis disease.
Hmm.
I believe it's some sort of gradual paralysis of
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. It looks like
like
some sort of an autoimmune disorder
yeah, where I
where
think
your
muscle
immune system attacks your nerves.
yeah,
Yep.
and it starts to decay your limbs, right? So
Hmm.
and paralyzes them.
Interesting.
Um,
Yeah.
so unfortunately, we would probably need a DNA test. You probably need a DNA test to
Yeah.
confirm that. And
Hmm.
I don't know if anyone's willing to go dig around to FDR's corpse to do that.
Yeah. Exactly.
Though there might still be DNA there at this point. Actually, there probably should
Yeah,
be.
there definitely will be.
Um,
Hmm.
so that is an interesting theory I did pull up, and I do when I looked into it, it does make sense because
It does. Yeah.
polio in adulthood is very odd and extremely
It's
rare.
yeah, quite rare because
Goalie
polio is a virus. So generally, the older you are, the more immunity you get towards it, and the more antibodies and stuff you
it
have. But
polio
interesting.
tends to attack in adolescence, so it doesn't make
It
sense
does.
for it
Yeah.
to attack in full adulthood unless FDR was
Yep.
secretly like 10 years old.
Which would be very interesting. But
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, like Grand Conspiracy, right? He was actually a kid all along.
Yep.
Um,
Right.
he actually, because of his paralysis, he actually made a deal with the media where they wouldn't take images or video of him with his leg braces on or him walking with a limp.
Hmm.
So there is rare footage out there that does show him walking with leg braces or being helped around by his bodyguards, helping him walk.
Hmm.
Though it is interesting that he did try to hide it and keep it out of the public eye. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, I think even today you probably would still have to hide something like that. Unfortunately, because I think you would still unnecessarily get ridiculed for something you really can't control.
Oh,
As
absolutely.
unfortunate as
Yeah.
that is.
Yeah.
Let's see here. The of course, he was the only president to serve more than 2 terms. He actually ended up serving 4, which
Hmm.
is absolute bonkers.
Yeah. That's insane.
To think this guy ended up getting elected 4 times.
Yeah.
This is really the closest we got to a dictator or any sort of authoritarian figure.
Pretty much. Yeah.
Not saying that he is a dictator, just that that's the closest where we got to like
Yeah.
the lifetime,
Yeah.
lifelong
In
president kind of thing.
power. Yeah, and power and control for sure. Definitely, maybe not quite so much with policy, but yeah.
Yeah. Let's see here. He oversaw World War II, a day which will live in infamy, of course, the infamous speech.
Yep.
Let's see here. He has a great quote that I found cited as the only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
Yes.
Basically he basically was try to comfort the American people during hard times, which I would argue that he did.
He
Especially
did,
since he
yeah.
voted for because even in his first 2 terms, even when it seemed that maybe his policies in the New Deal were maybe not quite working out, people were still
Yeah.
optimistic in voting for him.
Which is huge.
Because
Yeah.
it could be argued that the New Deal didn't actually work as it was intended to, but people still voted
Hmm.
for him regardless and believed in him.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
there is something to be said for that.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure.
I actually have all the or not all of them, but I have a good amount of the government organizations he founded.
Yeah.
So he founded the AA, the AAA, which is not the not the AAA for cars. It's
Hmm.
the Agricultural Adjustment Act.
Oh,
He
okay.
found the CCC, the Civilian
Hmm.
Conservation Corps, the NRA, not the one you're thinking of, National Recovery Administration, Public Works
Gotcha.
Administration, Civil Works. He created the SEC, which is still in use today.
Hmm.
A lot of these were temporary, but the SEC is still around. That's the Securities and Exchange Commission. So you'll see those guys.
Hmm.
You'll see in a lot of those like maybe like Wolf of Wall Street, for example. You see a bunch of SEC guys show up along with the FBI guys, and
Yep.
they're like investigating.
Gotcha. Yeah.
The Rural Electrification Administration, Federal Housing Administration, signed the Banking Act of 1933. He also created the
Hmm.
FDIC. He created the FDIC, which is still around, the Federal Deposit
Oh, yeah.
Insurance Corporation, National
Yep.
Labor Relations Board. So this is yeah. So this is a guy that totally supported a welfare state. You know, basically the idea
Yeah.
of big government. Government, you know, helps contribute to people's everyday life. Um,
Hmm.
let's see here. He also founded Social Security,
Oh, yeah. That's
which
that's a
is
big thing.
yeah, that's big. Though this is kind of going into today into my personal beliefs here. I believe we probably need to
Hmm.
find a way to reform Social Security for modern day,
Oh, yeah.
because when
Yep.
Social Security was founded, the average lifespan was like 60 something years. Remember, so, and you
Yeah.
have to recall that Social Security comes into play at like 65 or something,
Yep.
and that's why we've had a surplus of Social Security um, revenue. You know, so
Yeah.
because back then most people were not living much longer past 65. However, nowadays
No,
people
not
are
at
living
all.
till like at least 80 years old.
Hmm.
So at the very least, I do believe I'm not like a remove Social Security person, but I do believe we should probably
Yeah.
raise the age
Yes.
where
I
we
agree.
start doing that. Um,
Hmm.
let's see. The attack on Pearl Harbor and the U.S. territories. Um,
Hmm.
let's see. He did attempt to pack the Supreme Court, so he attempted to expand the Supreme Court from, I believe, 9 seats to like 13. So
Oh boy. Yeah. That's a
that
big
was not a
change.
huge that was not hugely popular. Um,
Yeah.
and an interesting tidbit about FDR as well that I tend to notice is that or not tend to notice, but one of the interesting backstories on FDR is his vice president Henry Wallace. At this time,
Hmm.
that was his vice president during his third term between 1940 and 1944. Was basically the leading progressive that was not
Yeah.
named FDR.
Hmm.
So this is a guy who's a big progressive, basically a huge advocate for anti-Nazism, you know, anti-fascism.
Yeah.
So this is he's also a guy who believes that we should have a diplomatic relation with the Soviet Union, that we shouldn't fling ourselves into a Cold War. See how that comes to play later.
Yeah. See how that lines up.
Yeah, see how that.
Yep.
So he did not believe in war with the Soviets or any sort of
Yeah.
mistrust. He wanted to have friendly relations with the Soviets in communist states,
Hmm.
for that matter.
Yep.
He was against dropping the atom bomb. He was against atomic weapons in general. And
Hmm.
honestly, if we end up doing like a vice president's video, or we end up just doing like some sort of separate segment on on like maybe overlooked figures in American history, Henry Wallace will be a very
Yeah.
cool one to talk about in the future, because this is a guy
Nice. Hmm.
who I've read up on about, and the more I've read up about him, the more I like him. So,
Yeah, for sure.
and
Nice.
actually in 1944 in the not Republican, excuse me, the Democratic National Assembly, or convention, excuse me. the he ended up being basically ousted by the Democrat Party because they believed he was too progressive, and ended up putting in Harry Truman as vice president for the FDR
Oh,
ticket.
yeah.
Apparently, there's a crazy story that the guy who was going to announce Wallace as vice president for the 1944 race apparently was like 5 feet away from the podium before the other party had managed to shut it down and basically say the night's over.
Yeah.
We're putting Truman on the ticket, right? So apparently this guy
Dang.
was
Yeah.
mere feet away from like changing history. Now I don't know
Dang.
how true that is, but if it is, that is absurd. Um,
Yeah, that's crazy.
and I will tell you, a Henry Wallace presidency would have been way different than a Truman presidency by a
Yeah,
mile.
definitely.
Um,
Hmm.
there's not really a ton more to say on FDR. Um, he
Yeah.
he was a big inspirer of the American people.
Hmm.
His policies still have an impact to this day. Um, of course, the longest tenured in office, he's also because of him they also created the 2-term limit.
Yeah,
So I
exactly.
would actually say that's a good thing. Even if that
Yeah, I
wasn't
agree.
intentional, even if he didn't intend to have that come into law, having the 2-term
Hmm.
limit, I do tend to find to be very positive. Um,
Yes.
I will have to give FDR a B or an A. Where are we going here?
Oh, I'm feeling, yeah, probably high B or low A right in that area as well. Because he did do a lot of things that honestly were pretty good, especially given the time period.
The only issue I have with this new deal is I'm not sure how well it actually worked. But honestly,
Yeah.
if we're ranking him based on the way he was able to rally the American spirit during tough
Yeah, that,
times, I will have to give him an A for that,
yeah, I agree.
just because of the
And
way he was.
that's a huge, huge thing too,
Yeah,
especially during the time.
I think being able to rally the troops, rally the American people in such a way, I think is can not be overstated on how important
Yeah,
that
the
is.
ability to create unity in a time like that is almost impossible. Like
Yeah.
kudos to him for that. So yeah, that's a big thing.
All right. So I kind of was trashing on Harry Truman there a bit towards the ends, but now we will talk more about him. So Harry Truman's next up. Do you have any opening thoughts on this guy?
Oh, the only thing I remember from him is the buck stops here. That's about it.
Oh, the buck stops here. The buck.
Yep,
That was
classic.
the buck definitely stops there. Yeah. Uh, so we'll get to MacArthur in a bit, but
Yeah.
okay. So Truman. So of course he was vice president under Roosevelt. Ended up taking over in April April. It was March or April 1945 after FDR died. Um,
Mhm.
Truman was a Truman was kind of a bookworm as a kid.
Yes. Hmm.
Definitely a nerd. How do I consider him? He actually during World War I he did manage to sneak into the army, memorizing an eye chart. This dude did not have
Oh
good eye,
wow.
so this dude did not have the eyesight that would qualify you to be in the military at all.
Yeah, exactly.
I believe he was partly blind in one eye, and his vision was
Oh
just
wow.
generally terrible. Um,
Hmm.
this is a dude that definitely could have benefited from modern day laser eye surgery, LASIKs and
Yeah,
whatnot.
LASIK.
Yeah.
Yep.
He ended up being a captain of the Dizzy D's unit, which was a famous World War I
Hmm.
unit in the U.S. Believe the U.S. Army or the Marines. Let's see. All right, Army. Excuse me. It would be the Army.
Hmm.
He was a post-war. He was a farmer. He was also a failed businessman. He never went to college, which is very interesting for American presidents because most of these guys attended college or had some sort of formal,
Yeah.
definitely at least like a law degree, right? A lot of them attended law
Hmm.
school. Um,
And quite a lot of them from prestigious universities as well.
yeah, yeah. He actually was quite the proficient piano player.
Nice.
He actually sometimes in the White House he would play the piano for guests or just because he could.
Hmm.
So cool.
Nice.
His political career really started when he was elected as Jackson County judge in Missouri. This was partly due to him having connections with the Pendergast family. These Pendergast were a prominent Republican family around this time.
Nice.
He ended up being elected senator in Missouri. After that, he ended up rising the ranks. He was seen as a moderate, so he ended up getting the vice presidential ticket. That's really the reason why he was put on the vice presidential ticket, was because he was seen as a moderate, as someone who wouldn't offend anyone. They also just didn't like Henry Wallace. He had the tough responsibility of ending World War II post Roosevelt's death. He did successfully end the war. However, he did have to make the tough choice to drop the atom bomb, or two of them really, on Japan.
Yeah.
This is still
True.
something that is hotly debated to this day. And and as much as I would love to speak to what I believe on that, really both sides of the coin are correct in my eyes in some ways.
Yeah, and that's my consensus as well. Yeah.
So,
Again, one of the toughest choices and toughest debates of all time, really.
you could argue that it killed hundreds of thousands of civilians, which it did, but you could also argue that it's prevented millions of civilians from dying.
Yeah,
A
exactly.
land invasion of Japan would have been seen as extremely costly, and likely
It would have been, yeah.
and likely Japan would have been split north and south, like you would have seen in Korea
Yeah.
and Vietnam. So arguably,
Yep.
it probably was the right decision, even if it was disgusting.
Yeah, for sure.
That being said as well, I do actually think them dropping the atom bomb and seeing the effects of the atom bomb did probably prevent us from nuclear war in some ways.
Honestly, yeah.
Because seeing firsthand how much destruction it could cause
Yeah.
probably made
And
people
honestly,
a
I
little
mean,
skeptical to use it.
absolutely, yeah. And even just from my fair share of watching footage of it and how horrifying and like disturbing it is just to even watch test footage, I can't imagine actually seeing it in real life. Like, it's something that's so horrifying and just beyond comprehension almost of how just crazy it is.
Of course, the scientist who helped create the bomb, Oppenheimer, was like horrified of his invention after the war.
Oh yeah.
Of course,
All of them were.
I'm sure you've seen the video or heard the radio broadcast of him basically calling. I think it was something like, "Oh, I've become death destroyer of worlds." I believe the quote was.
Yep. I believe so,
This
yeah.
dude was basically traumatized from creating such a destructive weapon.
Yeah, absolutely.
Ooh, excuse me. I'm like fucking like, I'm like burping up a storm over here. Sorry. I had some pizza earlier, so that's probably why.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Let's see here. Of course, he's famously known for the Truman Doctrine. The Truman Doctrine is basically the idea of the policy of the containment of communism. So basically the idea that we're going to contain communism by helping all these other countries become democratic and overthrowing communist leaders. So for example, you'll see this in Turkey and Greece. You'll see this in Latin America. You'll see this in the Middle East. They will basically go out of their way to make sure that a capitalist government is installed, no matter how ruthless that capitalist government ends up being. So that kind of started the trend of where you hear about the overthrow the democratically elected leader of the
Yeah.
country. That's kind of where that started.
Yep.
Not
And
saying not saying that
that's
we
another
weren't
thing that's just keeps coming back.
not saying that we weren't doing that before, but this is definitely when, at least in the Cold War, this is when we definitely see it like really pick up.
Yeah, absolutely.
He also proposed the Marshall Plan post World War II, which is the idea of of bringing economic aid to
Mhm.
Europe to rebuild Europe. This is one of Truman's better policies, in my opinion, because
Yeah, agreed.
basically it's the anti-treaty of Versailles. Instead of tear it all down and make them pay, instead you reconcile and help them rebuild. So this was a highly successful plan. Let's see here. Of course, the I'm looking here. He also created NATO, helped create NATO, which is of course the North
Yeah,
American
that's
Treaty
a big
Organization.
thing.
That is still around to
Yep.
this day. He also advocated for the Fair Deal, which is basically his shitty parody version of the New Deal. Not that it was actually shitty, but it's just the fact that he called it
Mhm.
the Fair Deal. It's like, okay, buddy, like calm down.
Yeah.
So, Fair Deal is basically health insurance, higher minimum wage, equal rates by law, etc. So, he is one of the presidents that does advocate for equal rights
Mhm.
in law. He doesn't quite get it done. It's still a little too early at this time, seemingly, but he
Yeah.
does advocate for it. Um, of course, the Korean War. Yeah, I don't know how I feel about the Korean War.
Yeah.
That's
Exactly. That yeah.
that kind of starts the
That
trend of the American World Police, and I don't know if I like the American World
yes.
Police all that much from seeing all the things it's done.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat with stuff like that. Yeah.
Um, so the Cold War really kicks up now. So
Mhm.
the UN coalition into Korea does not go well. It looked like at first the UN was going to push into Pyongyang. However,
Mhm.
and oust Kim Il Sung. However, the Chinese decide to invade and
Yep.
push the UN back to almost. They push them nearly back out of Seoul. And actually, if it wasn't Seoul, I believe it could have been Busan. But they nearly pushed them out of South Korea.
Yeah.
So
Dang.
China at this time was basically a brand new country at this point
Yeah, pretty much.
under
Yep.
Mao. So the fact that
Mhm.
it had just come out of basically 15, 20 years of civil war, so the fact that they were able to turn around and invade with, I think like for 600,000 troops is like absurd.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
and if,
Just ridiculous.
so and because of this, it ends up kind of being a stalemate. In order to break the stalemate, General Douglas
Mhm.
MacArthur, the World War II hero of the Pacific, proposes to Truman that he will drop America's nuclear arsenal on Korea.
Yes.
Now, I should not have to explain to you why that is wrong.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
I should not have to
Yep.
explain to any of the viewers why that is not a good thing. So,
Mhm.
of course, Truman actually lets MacArthur consider. He gives him time to reconsider his decision.
Mhm.
After I believe 3 weeks or so of MacArthur being stubborn, he ends up firing MacArthur. Rightfully so.
Nice. Yeah, good thing.
MacArthur was completely out of line. He went complete lunatic, to be frank,
Yeah, he really did.
and nearly you arguably caused a nuclear war. So
Yep.
because of that, I do
Yeah.
not tend to view
At
Douglas
the very least,
MacArthur.
mass casualties.
Yeah, would have killed probably millions of civilians as well. but
Yep. Yep.
not just troops, like, but um,
Yeah.
not to mention Korea probably would have been a barren wasteland because he just
Oh,
irradiated the
absolutely.
area.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
and so because of that, I do not hold MacArthur in a particularly positive light.
Hmm.
I did like I think a year ago I watched a biopic of Douglas
Hmm.
MacArthur from I think like either the 70s or 80s. That thing was super. I think it was made like after he had died, like just after he died. So that thing was super like propaganda like and super romantic. Had a super
Oh
romantic view
boy.
of him.
Yeah. Hmm.
In the half of the movie, I was laughing my ass off because of just like how absurd some of it was. It's like,
Oh, of
oh,
course.
Douglas
Yeah.
MacArthur, the great American hero. He Truman, and the movie had the audacity to like paint Truman as being like the getting in his way and you know preventing him from
Oh no.
unleashing his true plans of glory.
Yeah.
It's like
Oh, yikes.
fucking
Yikes.
hilarious movie though. Not a bad one
Yeah.
necessarily, just one that I don't tend to agree with.
Yeah, definitely more akin to propaganda than just entertainment. But yeah.
A thing to note with Truman as well, he the, the 1940 election, he was projected to lose in a landslide. He was not popular.
Hmm.
And Republican Thomas Dewey was projected to become the next president of the United States. However, the polls were super wrong. This is one of those times, kind of like 2016, you see a lot of parallels, where it
Yeah.
turns out that the
Yep.
polls were just dead wrong for whatever reason.
Oh, of course.
And Harry
Yep.
Truman ended up winning. So
Hmm.
there's the famous image of Harry Truman holding up the newspaper at the convention or at his like celebration or whatever. He's holding up at the podium.
Hmm.
He's holding up the newspaper that says Dewey defeats Truman. You know,
Hmm.
so
Dang.
and actually in some ways I think he relished in the fact that he basically got to stick it up to the Republicans one last time
Yeah, seriously.
because apparently he had actually fallen asleep. Of course, these elections go super late into the night. Apparently, he had fallen
Oh
asleep.
yeah, they do.
He was woken up at like 5 in the morning to be to have it be known that he had won the election. So
Oh my gosh,
he went
yeah.
to bed presuming that he was going to lose and leave. Um,
Dang.
so and by the way, Dewey had stayed up all night, so sucks for him.
Hmm.
Oh,
Yeah, dang. He lost sleep and the election.
that's
Dang.
absolutely unfortunate. Um,
Yeah.
Harry Truman, he's an interesting one. I would
He
probably,
is, yeah.
I probably have to give him. I don't really like the Cold War though. That's the issue. That's the main thing I have with him
Yeah.
because I do believe the
Me
Cold
neither.
War was
Yeah.
preventable. So,
It really was.
um, for I probably have to rank him a D, honestly. Probably-
Yeah, I was
Like
thinking probably low C or
like
D.
low C, high D. Yeah. Oh,
Hmm.
yeah. I tend to view the Cold War very negatively because I think all the proxy wars in
Yeah,
the U.S. world police was preventable, and
it was by far. Yeah.
Truman did not have to be so aggressive against the Soviets. I think we could have, especially when, in the context that Stalin ends up dying in '53. I think past 1953, you could definitely have a pretty solid relationship with the Soviet Union. You did not
Yeah,
have to
and I
push
think a
them.
lot of that was definitely due to like the Red Scare and all that kind of stuff. It that was honestly probably the most influential part of that. But yeah,
For sure. Okay, well, up next we have the famous World War II
Eisenhower.
general
Yeah.
Dwight D. Eisenhower. Um,
Hmm.
so the first thing to say about him, of course, he was the Allied commander in Europe,
Hmm.
oversaw victory in Europe. He probably has the best campaign slogan in history. I like Ike.
Yeah,
I Like Ike,
such a simple but good one.
very catchy. And actually, it
Yes.
actually, it actually reminds me of something. It reminds me of a great missed opportunity I had. Um,
Hmm.
when I was visiting family in North Carolina, and with my
Hmm.
and I went with my grandma and grandpa to an antique shop nearby,
Yeah.
and they actually had an I Like Ike bun, like one of the little buns in there.
Oh, really?
At the time,
Oh,
though, I
dang.
didn't understand what it meant. I was like, okay,
Yeah.
like, are they talking about Mike and Ike's? Like, that's actually what I thought it was
Yeah,
about. Like, are they
exactly.
Mike and Ike's? Because I was like 12 or something. But in
Yeah.
hindsight, man, would I have loved to have bought that?
Dang. Yeah. I wonder how much those would go for now. That's
Probably a
crazy.
good amount. So that's why I
Probably.
felt like
Yeah.
I probably could have gone away with a pretty good steal there, because it probably would have been like five.
Dang.
It probably would
Yeah.
have been like $5. So,
Probably. Yeah.
but I bet
Shoot.
you if I search up like one of those like buns, because it's an original as
Hmm.
well. So if I probably search it up, not only would I probably get a replica, it probably also cost like $20 for no reason. So
Oh, yeah. Definitely.
that was an unfortunate moment in my life. so
Yeah.
um
Shoot. Yeah.
so interesting thing to know about Eisenhower, he really was not a Democrat or a Republican. He Both
Hmm.
parties wanted him. He ended up choosing the Republicans because why not? He basically chose the
Yep.
party he had the best chance to win. He was extremely
Hmm.
popular, so he would have won regardless of what party he was in. He honestly probably
Oh,
could have won if he
absolutely.
was the third party candidate in some ways, just because he
Yeah.
was extremely famous.
Hmm. And the fact that he would even be close to being able to pull that off is huge. Like,
Yeah,
that's never really been done before
you have
or
to
even gotten close. So,
you have to be insanely popular to get away with something like that.
oh, yeah.
Let's see here. So Eisenhower brought the troops home from Korea, ended the Korean War. Basically, was willing to accept defeat, or not defeat necessarily, but accept stalemate. Decide, okay, fuck this isn't worth it, and brought the troops home. I do tend to view that as a good thing. However,
Agreed. Yep.
occupation in Korea did not end for a long time after. So, but I
Yes,
don't
which
blame
again is
Eisenhower
another
for that crappy. Um,
hmm.
he was a huge advocate against the military industrial complex. How that has come back to bite us in the ass,
Yeah,
because the military
it's a
industrial complex is stronger than ever.
it is. It really is. Yeah.
If the famous U.S. Army general is telling you about the military industrial complex and warning you not to trust it, you probably should not trust it.
Yeah. Like he's like probably one of the highest qualified people
Yeah,
that you would listen to in that regard, but you know,
yeah,
some
exactly.
a lot of things that have gone on politically don't essentially follow logic. So,
Yeah.
but yeah.
Well, like we have I think our Secretary of Defense or Secretary of State is like a Raytheon employee. So it's like
Oh
this is a
no.
guy who's directly connected to
Yeah.
you know uh to a defense contractor,
Yeah,
someone who
exactly.
is selling weapons to someone who's selling weapons overseas. So it's like
Yeah.
it's just not the best.
It was very akin to the head of the EPA pick in like
Oh,
2016 or around that time
oh God,
when the head of the
I
EPA
remember that.
was an oil baron. We can get into that later, but yeah,
Yeah, that was
very much same energy as that.
I'm gonna reach for my fan real quick because
All
I
right.
turned it off and then it got hot. So
Yeah, it's pretty warm here as well.
okay, yeah, and I think my volume's low enough to where it's not gonna really pick up much. So hopefully that should
No,
be
I can't hear it at all, so you're good.
perfect. Okay, let's see here. So he also died. Eisenhower also believed in the domino theory, basically the idea that if one state fell to communism, it would cause a domino effect that would spread across Asia, pretty much.
Hmm. Yep.
So that's where you kind of see Vietnam starting to stem up a bit.
Yeah, where it starts to kind of
This
lay down the foundation
yeah.
for that.
So at this point in time, Vietnam is fighting a war against its colonizers, France, and is kicking
Hmm.
their ass. Actually,
Oh yeah, yeah,
so if that was an indication to not fuck with them, I don't know what would be. Well,
exactly. Yeah, I love how like we looked at that and we were like, yeah, yeah, we'll go in anyways.
yeah, exactly. It's
It's
like, oh,
hilarious.
these rice farmers are just kicking their ass. Well, they're not gonna kick our ass because we're America. It's like, yeah, no, they will.
Oh yeah, they will.
Yeah. So, of course, this is around the time the CIA starts overthrowing governments. So this
Yep.
this is around the time the CIA really gets really powerful.
Hmm.
The also this is with the Cold War is kicking up, of course. So we got the arms race, the space race is starting up. During
Oh
this
yeah.
during this time, you're having the Soviet satellites enter space.
Hmm.
I believe towards the end of his presidency as well, I believe Yuri Gagarin entered space, first human to enter space.
Yes, I believe so.
I think that
Yep.
was 19. I think that was right at 1960. Um,
Hmm.
so of course Gagarin's the first man in space. Let's see here. He appointed Chief Justice Earl Warren, who was a
Hmm.
civil rights activist.
Nice.
Earl Warren was the former, I believe, governor of California at that time, but
Oh,
Chief
okay.
Justice Warren was a huge figure on the Supreme Court for many years. Definitely one of the most
Oh yeah.
impactful Supreme Court justices in American history. He
Hmm.
he he was part of the Brown v. Board of Education case, where they
Oh yep.
voted in favor of Brown and basically said that schools would have to desegregate.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah. So this is when you start to really see that. This is where you really start to see that white supremacist blockade in the South start to crumble a bit.
Yeah.
Eisenhower is probably arguably most famous for the Interstate Highway Act as president. This is, of course,
Yeah, that's right.
the huge infrastructure plan to
Hmm.
revitalize America's infrastructure for the future.
Yep.
Interestingly enough, Eisenhower had actually traveled on the old highways. I believe as like a captain in the 1920s.
Gotcha.
He had been sent. He was either captain or lieutenant. He had been sent. He had been sent out to. He
Hmm.
had been sent to travel across the country with a convoy to see how long it would take to reach the other side of the country with a military convoy. It took him
Oh,
two
nice.
months. It t-
Oh,
so this so
oh my gosh.
so
Yeah,
the roads were
that's
not the
crazy.
roads were not good. So
Not at all.
military
Yeah.
logistics were terrible. Um,
Hmm.
so I think that could be part of why it inspired him to enact such a policy. Eisenhower
Hmm.
also oversees the 50s, which is this big time of economic boom. This is, I mean, you've probably seen all the videos and all the music, like especially the music clips of like 1950s and how happy everyone looks and how everyone's white.
Yeah.
Um, you
Yep.
know, the poodle skirts and the Studebakers and stuff. So
Hmm.
definitely an idyllic time on the surface to be alive, if you're white.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Another recurring theme.
yeah, that could be argued for most of American history though.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
So in actually part of part of the consequence of Brown v. Board of Education, the schools in Little Rock, Arkansas, desegregate. However, are faced with mass protest, and the five black kids who are set to attend there get harassed and bullied.
Hmm.
And the lieutenant governor of Arkansas actually uses the state's National Guard to basically bar entry into the school, right? So he basically
Yeah,
used
exactly. Yep.
basically what Eisenhower did is he
Hmm.
basically took over the Arkansas National Guard, which basically meant the lieutenant
Dang.
governor does not any longer have control over them. He also ended
Hmm.
up sending in the 101st Airborne Division.
That's
Actually, no,
right.
it
Yep.
wasn't 101st. Sorry, it's the 82nd, which is another famous one.
Hmm.
He ended up sending in the 82nd Airborne Division into Little Rock, Arkansas, in 1956. Um,
Yep.
so we deployed troops, in a major American
Yeah.
city. Um,
Yeah.
though I believe this one
And
was
that
in good faith. Though this one was,
yeah, that was the Ruby Bridges thing, right?
I believe so. But
Hmm.
this is yeah. But basically, the troops were there to break up protest and allow five the five kids to actually attend school.
Yeah.
Apparently, they even had authority in the school. So, for example, if someone would harass or pick on the kids, the
Hmm.
soldiers could go up to the kid and they could go up to the kid, the bully, and basically harass and basically reprimand them, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
Which honestly is a
Dang.
pretty good way to stop harassment. If
Yeah,
this
that's a very good way.
because the the paratrooper armed with the M1 Grands, like
Yeah.
full uniform is like with his loaded rifle is just standing there like
Yeah.
maybe not. It's like maybe I don't want to be racist anymore. It's like
Yeah. The aggressive be nice campaign.
yeah, exactly.
Dang.
But actually, there was a great video I watched about the Little Rock. Um,
Hmm.
there was the Little Rock military response. It is so.
Nice.
It was very insightful for that. Um,
Hmm.
and that was the first time that that was the first time that federal since like 1876 basically that federal troops have been deployed. Because of course when Reconstruction ended, the federal troops had to leave the South. This is the
Hmm.
first time that the federal troops could actually defend, the could defend the 15th Amendment. So
Yeah. Exactly. Yep.
and defend equal rights for African Americans. Um,
Hmm.
I I do think Eisenhower's a pretty good president. I think it also helps that he's not.
I agree. Yeah.
I think it also helps that he's not Democrat or Republican. Really, in a lot of ways,
Mhm.
I'll probably give him a B as well. To be honest,
Yeah, I think that's pretty fitting. Yeah.
there you go.
Pretty good president, all things considered.
Yeah. Let's see here. There we go. God, we've been going for like an hour 40 minutes. That's insane.
Yeah.
Oh, and here we go. I want to make sure my lists are all good here. Okay, perfect. Up next, we have a little known figure known as John F. Kennedy.
Ah, yes.
I
Another one of the lesser known presidents.
yeah, the only reason I even know his name is because he was the first Roman Catholic president. Literally, he's not
Oh,
notable in any other way.
oh yeah, of course.
Um, so I guess we could call him Jack here. Jack Kennedy served in World War
Hmm.
II as a PT boat commander. I believe was awarded a Silver Star in combat. Um,
Hmm.
he actually had because of the war. He actually had severe back issues and would take like 60 pills a day to try
Oh my
to
gosh.
to try to ease his pain.
Yeah.
Um,
Dang.
so there are stories about him where his butlers or his staffers or whoever else they would walk in on
Hmm.
him in his bedroom and he would be laying on the floor, he would be laying on the floor of
Dang.
his
Yeah.
bedroom for hours because it would hurt to stand up or even
Good
sit.
grief. Yeah.
So dude was going through pain Probably could have seen a chiropractor or something potentially.
Oh yeah, something.
Yeah.
Sheesh. Spain without the S. Yeah.
Oh god. He also he was also alleged to have seen Marilyn Monroe a few times.
Yep.
I think that's basically confirmed at this point that he was probably ducking Marilyn Monroe. Notice how I say ducking.
Yeah, exactly.
Um,
This is YouTube, so
yeah. Nah, this thing's for kids anyways. This whole stream.
yeah.
Some of the stuff we're
Right.
talking about has been pretty gnarly.
Yeah.
But hey, I mean that's not the worst gig ever. Marilyn Monroe. Hey, nice.
Honestly, yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Too bad your wife. You have a wife though, so it kind of complicates things.
Yeah. That makes things a little difficult, I'd say.
And it's not like his wife was bad looking either. Jackie, it wasn't like
No.
Jackie was. Yeah. So he definitely had that.
Yep.
Let's see here. He was a Purple Heart recipient. Of course, he got wounded in World War II. Again, that's the back issue. That's kind of where the back issues come in. If I recall, I believe he got shrapnel or flak or something in his back. So
yeah, that's what I would guess.
fun times for him.
Yeah. Sheesh.
He was actually a Pulitzer Prize winner. I did not know that, but
Oh wow.
he
Me
won
neither.
the Pulitzer Prize. Of course, a lot of people remember him for being charismatic and charming. He was the youngest ever elected to the presidency. Let's see here. He also really kicked up the space race into top gear. Of course, there's the famous speech where he basically ensured that a man would be on the moon by the end of the decade, and that did in fact happen.
Yeah.
So he was right.
It did. Yep.
Unfortunately, he did not get to see it as he was assassinated in 1963 under suspicious circumstances.
Yeah.
There are a lot of different theories about it. The one I tend to align with personally, but I will say me aligning with this doesn't make me think it's true per se. The one I tend to align with is I believe Charles Morello in New Orleans. I believe the mafia had something to do with it. Lee Harvey Oswald had connections in New Orleans to the local mafia. Charles Morello was being convicted of extortion in 1963. Yep. Of course, the Attorney General at the time was Robert Kennedy. So this is definitely probably the guy who didn't like the Kennedys too much.
Yes, definitely.
Lee Harvey Oswald was from New Orleans, had connections there. Definitely had the means and motivations to do it.
Yeah.
But that's a whole different rabbit hole that I'm not going to get into today.
Yeah, for sure.
And
perhaps
again,
another
I should state I don't totally believe in it because there are definitely holes in that theory. It's just the one I think is more likely. I think it's more likely than like Lyndon Johnson killing him or the CIA or something like that. So.
Yeah, for sure.
Of course, there's the Bay of Pigs invasion.
Yep.
Bay of Pigs that went absolutely horrendously because of
that was.
It was actually
was bad.
Ended up being used as means to start the Cuban Missile Crisis. The Cuban Missile Crisis, though, was partly caused by the fact that Kennedy ended up putting missiles in Turkey. Once he removed the missiles out of Turkey, the Soviets magically didn't care about Cuba anymore. It's funny how that works.
Right.
Of course, he also has the he also had the term "Ich bin ein Berliner." Ich bin ein Berliner does not mean you're a jelly donut. There is the term that like, haha, he called himself a jelly donut. No.
Yeah.
Ich bin ein Berliner does not. It actually means as it says. I am a Berliner or a resident of Berlin. So
yeah. That's why I was like, I don't know much German, but I can definitely definitely tell that's not what that meant.
So
I see.
I think the reason the theory comes, I think that where the theory comes from is that there was a pastry that had the slang name of Berliner.
Oh
However,
yeah, yeah.
if you were going to, however, him saying "Ich bin ein Berliner," Germans were not thinking he was calling himself a jelly donut. If he was going to call himself a jelly donut, he would have said "Ich bin ein jelly donut" or something like that, right?
Yes. Yeah.
He would
Something
not.
along those lines.
Yeah. So that his terminology was actually correct there. So that is one of those.
Hmm.
That's one of those like really weird, pointless controversies.
Yeah.
You know, kind of like the William Howard Taft in the bathtub.
Yeah,
Kind of
stuff like that
thing.
that just gets blown out of proportion for some
Yeah,
reason,
James Buchanan being
and it's often a
gay.
misconception.
Yeah, James.
Yeah.
Now, actually, I mean, hey, James Buchanan might have been gay, but we'll never know. See,
True. Yep.
so it's not really in our place to
Who
speculate
knows?
about it.
Yeah.
Let's see. Kennedy's the one who starts really escalating the Vietnam conflict, though it is possible that he was eventually going to back down. I don't necessarily think that's the case, though.
Hmm.
I think people don't realize about Kennedy sometimes is this man was a fervent anti-communist. He actually was a supporter of Joseph McCarthy. Um,
Hmm.
and he supported McCarthyism, the idea that there are communists among us, and now we're gonna get
Yeah.
the Among Us reference.
Yeah. I was like, oh no,
Yeah,
bad choice of wording there.
I kind of heard it. I heard me say it. And I was like, oh fuck.
Yeah.
Basically, there are communist spies in the country, so he actually does abide by it. Him and the Kennedy family did actually attend Joseph McCarthy's funeral. This is interesting
Gotcha.
to note.
Yep.
So they're definitely people who support the anti-communist fervor.
Yeah.
With that being said, though, he did propose in private with Khrushchev. He did actually propose a space alliance with the Soviets. Basically, what this would have done is this would have joined the USSR and the United States space forces together to use. It would have been basically a joint mission to the moon,
Yeah.
which arguably would have probably have been better that way.
Honestly, yeah. It
Um,
probably would have been more beneficial.
and honestly, if the world had seen a Russian astronaut and an American astronaut go up together and plant both of their flags together, it probably
Yeah.
would have done a lot for humanity. But
Yeah, that would have completely changed the attitude at the time.
that
And
also
even
possibly
today,
could have ended
yeah.
the Cold War, arguably,
Yeah, which is insane.
like 20 years
Dang.
earlier than it did. So,
Yeah.
um,
Jeez.
let's see here. He has an airport named after him. I literally have that listed on my paper. That's fucking hilarious. Like, yes, an airport's named after him. Wow. Like,
Yep.
let's see here. He also, there's also the famous televised debate against Richard Nixon in the 1960 election. Basically, 1960 was a very close election, but people who had listened to the debate on the radio thought Nixon had done a better job because they thought Nixon was a better speaker and seemed to know what he was talking about more. However, the people who were watching on TV, who end up being the majority of it, end up preferring Kennedy because of his looks and his charm.
Gotcha. Yeah, his charisma.
And not to mention, if you watch the footage from that debate, Kennedy has makeup on and he's all smiling and looking all fresh, right? Got the drip.
Yeah.
Nixon is
Yes.
Nixon is sweating balls. He has like sweat under his nostrils. You know how you get that kind of thing
Oh, yeah.
sometimes. Yeah. So
Yep.
he's looking
Dang.
pretty sweaty. He looks tired. He looks uncomfortable. So, and you can argue it had it played a part in him losing the election
Yep.
against Kennedy.
Hmm. Yeah, those kinds of things are huge.
Yeah, surprisingly,
Yeah.
just something like looks could be all the difference, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Um, yeah. But for Kennedy, man, I don't like to I don't like to rate Kennedy amazingly
Yeah.
high because I do think sometimes he gets overrated. With that being
Yes, I
said, though,
agree.
I still believe he is a solid president, and I
Yeah,
still believe
agreed.
I still think he's B tier.
I think he is as well. Yeah.
But
Not quite A tier, but yeah.
I can't bring myself to put him any higher than that.
Hmm.
Um, so we're
Yeah.
getting into the
Charisma only gets you so far with stuff like this, yeah.
yeah, we're getting into the interesting ones now. This is when it gets spicy, okay? 'Cause,
Yeah.
yeah, this is when it gets spooky. What do we rate Coolidge? We rate Coolidge B tier.
Hmm.
Um, okay, so God, I'm kind of scared to talk about this guy because he's pretty damn controversial.
He
Um,
is, yeah.
and I'm
That
actually more scared
picture
to
is
talk about.
terrifying.
I'm more scared to talk about him than Nixon. Actually, this would be Lyndon B.
Yeah.
Johnson.
Yep.
Do you have any opening thoughts on LBJ?
Oh man, I honestly, other than just kind of the whole controversialness of him, honestly, other than that, not a whole lot.
Yeah, he scares me. He scares me to
Yeah,
talk about
he's
because he's kind of there's a lot of
he's
good, there's
something.
a lot of bad.
Yeah, quite a bit.
So we'll start from his early life.
Hmm.
He grew up poor in Texas. Um, he ended up I want to say he ended up becoming a school teacher. Um,
Hmm.
I believe, and if I recall, he ended up actually teaching. I think he ended up teaching like a bunch of Mexican kids in a small schoolhouse.
Nice. Hmm.
Apparently that had kind of shifted his views on race from an early age.
Interesting. Yeah.
He was elected to Congress. He ended up leaving Congress to fight in World War II. He
Hmm.
earned a Silver Star in World War II. Came back, served more time in Congress. I believe he ended up moving up to the Senate.
Hmm.
End up becoming Senate Majority and Minority Leader. So
Wow.
definitely a big member in the Democratic Party. Um,
Yeah.
so a thing to mention about him. Um, from a personal perspective, I do not terribly respect this guy. Um,
Yeah. Me neither.
for one, I think he's kind of. I think by today's standards, there's no way he would ever be elected president. Probably.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely.
because human resources would probably have been on his ass by the time he entered the doors of Congress.
Yeah.
So a couple of infamous stories about Johnson. So whenever he would sometimes when he would sit on the toilet and take a dump,
Hmm.
he would leave the door open while he's like wiping his ass to talk to his staffers and cabinet members. So
Dang.
he would basically sit there and and I'm gonna try to do an impression here, but he's basically like,
Yeah.
we can't let the damn protesters, like, yeah. As you have to imagine visually while he's like wiping his ass,
Yeah.
he's
That's
he's
cursed.
basically like, we can't let those damn Viet Cong get the better of us. Um, mind you, he also had gallbladder disease, so this is a guy who was probably sitting on the toilet for a good amount of time.
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
Definitely definitely makes more sense when you think about why he's probably talking to people in the toilet.
Yes.
Um, mind you, he is talking to these people while his pants are down and everything. So it's not like he's
Hmm.
it's not like he's covering up or anything, right? So,
Yeah. Dang.
um, he also had an amphibious car. He would sometimes
Oh
prank
yeah.
he would sometimes prank guests by pretending to lose control of his vehicle and drive straight into the water. In turn, the people would
Nice.
freak the fuck out, and then they would realize that the car's
Yeah.
floating.
Yep.
Um,
Dang.
so this dude is wild. He also
He's the embodiment of chaos.
he is yeah. He was also known to whip his dick out in front of staffers.
Mm,
So
interesting.
he would literally whip his dick out. He would actually call it the Johnson. So so this
Oh no. Yeah.
so this is a guy who's clearly like not afraid to show it. So, you know.
Yeah.
So,
Hmm.
and he didn't care who you were. I mean, I think I heard of a
Oh
story
yeah.
where he was talking to. I think I heard of a story one time where it was like
Yeah.
a brand new staffer, and he basically was
Yep.
like, he's basically like, I want to show you something, new guy, and he like zipped down his pants and pulled it out. It's like,
Oh no. Oh god. Imagine that being like your first day in the cabinet and like that happens. Oh yeah, that's unfortunate.
so
Dang.
this is he's a very interesting figure in that regard.
Yeah, for sure.
Again, in 2021 standards, there is no way this dude would have ever made it in public
Oh no.
office because
Not at all.
he would have probably been arrested.
Yes, absolutely.
Let's see here. I believe there was another story here that I'm looking for. Oh yeah, here we go. The there was a recorded phone call of him in the White House of him calling his tailor, and basically like, it's so funny. He basically
Oh
was
no.
calling up his tailor and he was like, "Can you make more room in the ball sack? It's getting sweaty down there." It's like, and
Yeah.
it's like, he's like, I can't fit my balls in these pants. It's,
Yep. Dang.
so
I don't know whether to respect that or to fear that.
extremely cursed individual in general.
Yes.
And
Very, very much so.
He's a guy who
Yeah.
clearly gives no fucks. Like,
Yeah. He was a character for sure.
yeah. So he's someone where I would have liked to have met them a couple of times, like out in public, but I
Yeah.
would not want to work for him.
Yes. Exactly.
Because I felt like the moment I would get into a room alone with him, he would whip his dick out. Yo,
Yeah, exactly.
hey, meme stiff, look at my Johnson. The ladies say it's pretty big. It's like, okay,
It's like,
Lyndon. It's like,
okay, thank you.
weird flex, Lyndon.
Yeah, exactly.
So there's a couple of defining things right away we can mention with him from a domestic and foreign policy perspective. Of course, the Vietnam War is probably the most notable.
Yeah. That was huge.
The Gulf of Tonkin incident, which was I'm pretty sure was basically staged by the United States, brought the United States into official conflict against the North Vietnamese. It's also important to mention there was no official declaration of war against North Vietnam. So
Yeah.
something to remember with a lot of these wars in the future here that we'll mention and later, they do not have official declarations of war. The presidents are basically using war powers to allow themselves to go into these countries. He founded PBS, so if whenever you watch Mr. Rogers' videos, or you watch Bob Ross, I almost called him Bill Ross. Oh God! You ever watch Bob Ross? You could think him.
Yeah.
Let's see here. I have to pass all the like shit I was talking about him with like pulling his dick out, because I have like that alone takes up like a third of his notes.
Yeah.
um let's see here. I already talked about his early life. His wife Ladybird, that's her actual name, by the way, was actually Ladybird.
Really
Her
interesting.
real name was like Claudia Taylor or something like that.
Hmm.
But when she was young, she was bestowed the nickname Ladybird by a teacher, and it kind of stuck.
Nice.
So, she was a savvy businesswoman and a great investor. So
Hmm.
she was very intelligent in that regard.
Hmm.
Though I am kind of scared of this power couple, because I'm imagining him pulling out the Johnson, like they're in the bedroom and he pulls out the Johnson and she's like, let me give you the bird, right? It's like, okay, guys.
Yeah.
Oh, God. But it's just such a cursed person
I'm
to
just
talk about. I mean, like,
Yeah, I'm just imagining an extremely cursed like Shark Tank episode.
uh,
You got the investor and you got the super charismatic guy.
oh, God. Oh, yeah, they're like on Shark Tank. I propose to you, the Great Society. And then he's like sneakily zipping down his pants while he's like pulling up the blackboard.
Yeah, exactly.
God. Uh, it's so fucking bad. The um his you could argue though his domestic policy, even if his foreign policy was terrible. I actually
Hmm.
first I will mention more in his foreign policy. So not only did we have Vietnam, at this time the Soviet Union was going through a bit of dysfunction, and there was a great opportunity, really, if the United States really wanted to dominate the Soviets. This was probably the time to
Hmm.
do it, and they missed the opportunity due to
Yes.
their bungling in Vietnam.
Hmm.
Back to his domestic policy, though. He of course proposed the Great Society. Great Society was made up of Medicare, Medicaid, welfare. So basically proposing the
Nice. Yeah.
modern welfare state that we have today. Um,
Hmm.
let's see here. He was big on helping the poor. He had grown up poor
That's a good
himself,
thing.
and he had experienced in a lot. He had seen a lot of poverty. So
Yeah.
his belief system was basically to end poverty.
Hmm.
The Great Society did under lasted until Reagan. Reagan is basically when it died. Um,
Gotcha. Yeah.
the studies do tend to show that the Great Society at least worked somewhat. It did seem that the poverty
Hmm.
rates did drop. It might have not dropped as much as they had thought, but it did sort of work. But
Yeah.
so there was promise at least there. Um,
Yes.
Now, when I think of Lyndon B. Johnson's presidency as well, this was just a really generally I feel like dark time in American history. Um,
It was. Yeah. Very much so.
Despite the passing of the Civil Rights Act and the Equal Voting Rights Acts, despite that all,
Mhm.
you of course get the 1967 Detroit riots. You get the assassinations of Martin Luther King and Robert
Yep.
Kennedy. Um, so in massive, this is also a time when massive inflation becomes a problem. Of course
Hmm.
the huge government welfare programs are really taxing on the federal government. So that's where you kind of see
Yes.
inflation start to show up.
Hmm.
Um, there was also there was also the protesters, the anti-war protesters, and they had
Hmm.
they were not too much of a fan of Johnson. They even had a
Yes.
little chant that they would for him. The
Hmm.
chant goes, "Hey hey LBJ, how many kids did you kill today?" Which is like,
Dang.
yeah, yeah. Now
Sheesh.
objectively, LBJ probably killed like 100 kids a day. That's a
Yes.
modest value, but if you wanna, yeah, he probably did kill a lot of kids.
Yeah, definitely. Yep.
um, so yeah, Lyndon Johnson is he's interesting.
Yeah, very much so. I think
I
I think he's one of those that's like
He's so
he has good
controversial.
intentions. Yeah, he has good intentions, but when it goes to putting stuff in practice, it was not very good.
Yeah. Oh God. The um the Great Society I thought was a good idea, and
Yeah.
I like the intention. I like the intentions of his domestic policy. His domestic policy I thought was very good. His foreign policy was
Yeah.
terrible though, and it seemed like that
Oh,
was
of
the
course.
same. That seemed
Yep.
similar with Kennedy. Like
Yeah.
I don't know what the Democrats are doing at this time, but it's like their foreign policy was garbage. Like
It was very, very bad. Yeah.
it's like the fast track speed run to getting a fucking nuclear war or civil unrest. It's like
Yeah, it was essentially causing as much conflict and stuff as possible, and I genuinely don't understand why.
they're
I
so
mean,
hell bent on it. It's
the only benefits from conflict are for industrial complexes, and that's really about it.
pretty
It basically screws
much.
over the government, it screws over the people, like everything else. So it's crazy that stuff like that, at this, especially around this time period, keeps recurring.
Um, God, I will say with LBJ, I'm not sure if civil rights would have been passed without LBJ though. At least not
That's
at that
true. Yeah.
time.
Yep.
Kennedy was arguably a bigger advocate for civil rights, and
Hmm.
even then he could never get it done. LBJ
Yeah.
was of course was known to be domineering, probably because he had the big dick power move that he would basically he would employ his trap card by whipping his dick out and basically forcing you to look at it. So I
Exactly. Yeah.
imagine that he was able to have his way with people. So, but
Most likely.
he did convince Congress and the Senate to vote on for the Civil Rights Act. And I'm not
Hmm.
sure if anyone else would have been able to do that.
Yeah.
You could argue that Nixon probably could have done it, but in
Yeah.
understanding the context of when it was passed in 1964, the fact that they would have had to have waited until at least 1969,
Hmm.
is pretty wild. Um,
Yeah. Seriously.
Lyndon B. Johnson to me, despite what I think of her personally, is probably the definition of a C tier because there is a
Yes, I
lot of
agree.
good
Yep.
and a lot of bad. Now,
Yeah. Yeah.
this will be controversial. I already know. Like the replay will be controversial because some people really love him and will say we ranked him too low, and some people
Yeah.
really hate him.
Hmm.
I kind of have a weird dilemma with him where I sort of don't love him, but I sort of don't hate him. Um,
Yeah. Again, another one of those with like his social stuff
oh God,
wasn't bad, but when he actually goes to put it in practice, not much happens. And
it's
then, you lump that in with foreign policy and all that, and it kind of tanks.
yeah. Um, it, I mean honestly, like rank people are gonna be mad as fuck that I'm gonna rank him above Truman because they're gonna be like, oh, Truman's so
Hmm.
good, but no, no.
Yeah.
So
And honestly, I would like to actually see people comment and stuff because I like
I
to
actually
hear
would be very
other
interested to see
opinions
what
and
people
stuff. Yeah.
think. Yeah, of the
Yeah.
let's see. I can't believe we've been going for over 2 hours already. God, that's
I
insane.
know.
And we just reached Nixon. Like, yeah, I knew we needed a part three. God.
Yeah, of course.
Actually, that would be nice though, because we could get RDZ back for part three potentially. So,
That's
not the
true.
worst
Yeah,
thing ever.
that'd be good, especially with the more modern presidents, because there's again, we've only gone through geez, where did we end off? Woodrow Wilson, I believe.
Yeah, we ended off on
Yeah,
Wilson.
and then we went from here to Nixon. So we went through like 10-ish, something like
I
that,
think we could.
in about 2 hours.
I think
So
we could. Yeah, it's not the worst pace ever. We could probably get. We could probably get to like Reagan. We could probably leave off on like Reagan.
yeah,
I
I
think.
think so.
Um.
I think that's a good one to end on. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see here. So, next one we got a Futurama star, Richard Nixon.
Oh yeah.
So, of course, he's the famous actor. He starred on Futurama.
Mm-hmm.
So, great actor. Great job impersonating himself in a cryogenic chamber.
Yeah.
Okay, and let's be honest. When we think of Richard Nixon, probably the first word we hear is Watergate.
Yeah, that's what I thought as well. Yep. Watergate.
So, Watergate, of course, is a big scandal. In fact,
Huge,
it's so big that he's the first president to resign, and might be the only president for a long time to resign from the presidency.
Oh yeah.
He, at this point in time, when Watergate happens, he is not perceived in the same way he used to be. The Republican Party is rapidly changing, and Nixon does not quite fit what they want anymore. So they are content with kicking him out. Not to mention that Spiro Agnew, who was like a fucking terrible person. Spiro Agnew had resigned from the vice presidency, and Gerald Ford had been put in as vice president. So you could argue that the only reason Nixon ended up resigning or was forced to resign was because Gerald Ford was vice president. Because if Spiro Agnew was vice president, there is no way in hell they would have kicked Nixon out.
No way. Yeah, no way.
If you take 5 minutes to read up on Spiro Agnew, you will be disgusted by him. He looks like a testicle. He probably smells like a testicle, and he acts like a testicle. So, this is not a guy that you want to be president.
Yes.
Spiro is probably him and like Dick Cheney are probably the worst vice presidents in American history.
God, yeah. I just added a tab for Spiro because I haven't heard anything about it, so I'm going to read up on him once we're done.
Aaron Burr is probably a close third because killing Hamilton in a duel while you're vice president is pretty bad. So
yeah, that's pretty crazy.
So Nixon grew up in poverty. I would actually say he had a pretty rough childhood, even compared to other people who had grown up poor. His family was basically broke. His father, I believe, was a failed farmer who was depressed and loathed himself. So he had a tough childhood, and actually, if I recall, I think he grew up around the time where the farmers were really struggling in the 20s and 30s. So not a fun time to be alive.
No.
He ended up going to law school. He ended up going to college. Ended up graduating. Early on, people could tell that he was a shrewd politician. For whatever reason, Richard Nixon had just the traits to be one of the best politicians in history. That is something I would give him credit for. This man knows how to be a politician. That doesn't mean that's not a good thing necessarily, but he knows how to be a politician. He knows what it takes to be one. He knows he knows what he can do to make people like him. He was a supporter of Joseph McCarthy, of course, during the McCarthyism age. he actually claimed during that time that the government was full of Soviet spies. That actually turned out to be true.
Mm.
The government
Yeah.
actually was full of Soviet spies. There were a bunch of Soviets living abroad, spying on the American people. Of course, with the Manhattan Project, there was a Soviet spy in the Manhattan Project. So,
Oh yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
they were
As you might expect.
so they were being spied on. So he was right about that.
Hmm.
So, let's see. He was vice president under Eisenhower. I have it listed here. He was sweaty and gross looking during the televised debate versus JFK, as I mentioned earlier.
Yep.
The fact that I wrote it like that is hilarious.
Yeah.
To be fair, I probably wrote these notes down at like 2 a.m., so that's probably why I
Probably.
wrote it down like that.
I mean, you're not wrong though. So
No, he did look sweaty and gross looking. I actually should search up
yes.
a picture. Richard, yeah, like Richard Nixon 1960 debate. Because he looks like so sweaty.
He does. Yeah. He looks like he's got like a fever or something almost.
Yeah. So there's also the picture where he's like wiping the sweat under his nose. Yeah. Like,
Yeah.
dude was not looking like he was having a good time.
That's right. Yep. There it is.
Yeah. Not great. Let's see here. Of course, he's the only person to resign. We already mentioned that. He did get out of Vietnam, but
True,
but admittedly, he kind of dragged his feet with it and took his sweet time. But he did get out of Vietnam. Let's see here. He opened trade with China. That's probably one of his best accomplishments. He went to China and opened trade. That was so opening relations with China and the U.S.
That's huge.
Now I've seen people use that against him because I've seen them use it against him as being like, oh well, now China's this global superpower. They're gonna take over the world. It's his fault. Not really. Because it was kind of inevitable that China would rise to such a height.
Yeah, naturally.
They didn't, whether they used the U.S. or they were going to use Europe or Africa or wherever else, they would have found a way.
Yeah, I mean, if we found a way, China would. I mean,
yeah,
that's just kind of how it goes for a lot of influential countries. So
he eased tensions with the Soviet Union. So tensions had heightened during the Kennedy and Johnson administrations. He had managed to kind of settle things back down.
Yeah, which is a good thing, I would argue.
Him and Leonid Brezhnev actually end up being fairly friendly with each other. Brezhnev actually spent the night over at his house once in California, which I find hilarious.
Nice. Yeah, that's funny.
Now the truth is not as interesting, but I kind of, when I first heard that, I kind of imagined him and Brezhnev like cuddling in a bed together.
Yeah.
What actually happened though is he just ended up sleeping in the guest room or something. But
Gotcha. Yeah.
So reality is often sadder,
disappointing.
Yeah, that's it. But he also created the EPA, of course, the Environmental Protection Agency.
Nice.
That is is still one of those. There's one of his policies that has aged well. EPA has aged quite well and is still in effect to this day. He also he did start the war on drugs.
Yes.
So this is when you start seeing the boomers get mad over marijuana and stuff. So that will kind of lead later into the into some of the drugs. And the war on drugs will get only worse from here.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Especially
when we get to like Reagan.
Oh yeah. He supported Israel during the Yom Kippur War. Because of this, the Arabs did not like that too much and ended up putting an embargo on the U.S. The Pentagon Papers basically exposed him. That was kind of where Watergate started. Exposed what happened to Watergate. And the last thing I have listed on here is he has a funny voice. He does kind of have a funny voice.
He does, yeah.
And the thing I will say about Nixon, and you'll notice this the more you think about it, think about former presidents who like out of former presidents, who is the one we talk about the most? Probably one of them is definitely Richard Nixon.
Yes, like, he is definitely up there, mostly because of Watergate.
Yeah, but who appears in pop culture the most? Nixon. Think about it. Think about all the movies and shows he appears in.
Oh yeah.
I mean, this dude is infamous.
Yeah, that's right. Yep.
And so
interesting.
This is definitely a guy who is, his legacy, for good or bad, is massive.
Yeah, huge. Huge.
And actually, there's a clip I really like from the movie The Butler. It's basically actors John Cusack as Nixon, and he says the funniest fucking line, and it sounds like what Nixon would actually say. Not to be negative to that Kennedy boy or anything. I'm sure he's a real nice fellow. But do you really want that spoiled rich son of a bitch fuck to be your next president?
Nice.
So that does sound like something you would say.
That really does, yeah.
I'm gonna search that up. Because I need to pull that up for the stream, because that one is hilarious.
Yeah, that's a good one.
So, like, I literally love that. I love that clip so much. I'm gonna see what I can find. So I'm actually gonna pull this up real quick. So he basically rolls up on like the kitchen. So John Cusack does not look anything like Nixon, but I love the mannerisms.
Not at all.
Do you really want that?
The mannerisms.
Son of a bitch, fuck to be your next president.
Yeah, the mannerisms and stuff is dead on.
I love that clip. It's it's something I keep coming back to because I kept after I watched it because it's fucking hilarious to me.
It is, yeah. It's hilarious.
And something I forgot to mention about Nixon, he was the one that lowered the voting age from 21 to 18.
Oh yeah.
Of course, around this time, this is the anti-war protesters were saying, well, we can fight a war overseas and die for our country, but we can't vote.
Yeah.
Because of course you get drafted at 18, but you can't vote until you're 21 at the time. So Nixon did lower the voting age to 18.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing.
Now, funny enough, he definitely was against hippies. And actually, the way he saw to get rid of the hippie movement, like the huge anti-war protest movement, is if he would just lower the voting age. And funny enough, it basically worked. Once he lowered the voting age, people were like, "Fuck it, this. We got what we wanted. Let's go home." Of course, there were still the war protesters. There were definitely still there, but it was not the same as like in 1968 when it was really at its height. Nixon also met Elvis in the White House.
Oh, interesting.
Elvis wanted to be a federal agent, so Nixon gave him a badge from like a federal administration that was like long gone.
Nice.
And Elvis actually brought his Colt 45 service pistol from his time in the military with him in the White House.
Dang.
And he nearly got shot by the Secret Service.
Oh my gosh.
Because of it.
Yeah. Jeez.
And funny enough, Nixon didn't even really like Elvis, but he had talked over with his PR guys, and he was like, okay, yeah, fuck it, we'll talk to Elvis because it'll be like a good PR stunt. And it was.
Yeah,
it was
definitely.
Like a PR stunt.
Oh yeah.
But the thing that defines Nixon, though, his cabinet was full of the degenerate cronies. I mentioned Spiro Agnew. I did not. I have not.
Mm-hmm.
I did not mention Kissinger. Henry Kissinger is terrifying as
Mm-hmm.
well.
Oh yeah. Jeez.
So Nixon, shrewd politician. He had some he had good accomplishments, but scandal will kind of defines him. Um,
Oh yeah, by far.
where do you rank him? Because I kind of have an idea of where I rank him.
He's definitely going to be a fair bit lower, probably D or E.
I Yeah, I go with D.
Yeah, I think so.
Because I don't think he's. I think
Yeah,
Watergate's
there's kind of no retribution from Watergate. Yeah,
yeah, but I actually do think there were some things he did that are commendable.
yeah, that's true.
Let's see here. And now, with that, we are on to Gerald Ford.
Ooh,
Fun fact about Gerald Ford: he is the only unelected president in American history. What that means is that he was never elected as vice president.
Mm-hmm.
He was added on as vice president after Spiro Agnew resigned and was never formally elected.
Yeah,
So,
it's kind of crazy.
Gerald Ford, the media portrayed him to be clumsy and unintelligent.
Mm-hmm.
In my research of him, I found that to be blatantly false.
Yeah.
For example, there were SNL really loved to bash this
Mm-hmm.
guy, and they would basically portray him as a bumbling idiot who would like stumble around. To say it is demonstrably false for a few reasons. For one,
Yeah.
Gerald Ford was a star athlete at the University of Michigan, star football player.
Oh yeah.
So this is
Mm-hmm.
I would actually say he was probably our most athletic president in history. Most athletic, probably most physically. Him and Carter are probably the most physically fit presidents in American history.
Yeah, definitely.
So Gerald Ford he's not this clumsy like dumbass that I think people
No.
remember him as.
Yep.
Honestly, I think he was brought into a really shitty situation. He had to do damage control.
Yeah. Very much so. Which is again another recurring theme with presidents in general.
Yeah. In some ways, he reminds me of Hoover. It's kind of just a really shitty
He kind of
situation
does.
to be in, but he tries
Yeah.
at least.
Yes.
So Gerald Ford was born, I believe, in Wisconsin, somewhere up north. It's kind of bad that
Something
I don't
like
actually
that,
know
yeah.
where he was born. I believe it was Wisconsin, though. Ford,
Mhm. It was either that or somewhere in Michigan because he grew. Oh no.
he grew up.
Oh, interesting. He was born in Omaha, Nebraska, but he grew up in Grand Rapids, Michigan.
Oh shit. Okay, so I was totally wrong. Okay, gotcha.
Interesting. Yeah.
Cool. All
I
right.
mean, you got the region right, Midwest.
Damn. Yeah, got me there. I've been exposed. He actually grew up in an abusive household. His biological father would hit his mother. So this, so, this is someone who experienced firsthand domestic abuse, and I believe he might have received some as well.
I would imagine.
His mom ended up leaving his biological father and remarried and married a man named Gerald Ford. That is where his name comes from. His biological name was not Gerald Ford. He actually he changed his birth name after his stepfather because he admired him. Of course, I already mentioned he was a football star at Michigan. He was on some really good Michigan Wolverine teams. He was very well versed in economics. That was he was a longtime congressman, so that was kind of his field was economics. A lot of
Yeah.
being in the House of Representatives, a lot of the bills you look at are based on economic policy.
Yes,
So he was
definitely.
very well versed in economics. This is probably the last president that actually cared about the deficit. Like we hear about the
Hmm.
deficit and the national debt. He is probably the
Yeah.
last guy that actually gave a crap about it, to be honest.
Hmm.
Um his actual goal in life was to be Speaker of the House. Unfortunately,
Hmm.
the closest he got was Minority Whip. Um,
Interesting. Yeah.
at this time, the Republicans were not holding majorities in the House.
Hmm.
The House was at this time was mostly dominated by Democrats. Yeah, for context, a lot of the Democrats at this time are considered these New Deal era Democrats. So like kind of left
Hmm.
over from like the FDR Truman age. So these are kind of so they're fairly popular, especially in rural America.
Oh yeah.
So it's hard for the House to really get for the Republicans in the House to really get a majority. So unfortunately,
Hmm.
while he was Minority Whip leader, he never quite got the opportunity to be Speaker of the House, which is something he has
Yep.
strived for. He was a poor public speaker. Um, if you watch if you watch any of his speeches, he is not particularly charismatic on the microphone.
Hmm.
However, it should be stated that seems like behind closed doors he was quite charismatic. Just was not just not a good public speaker.
Yeah.
He's in a way in that regard he's kind of like the opposite of Barack Obama because Obama is a really
Yeah.
good public speaker,
True.
but Obama one-on-one is not as good.
Oh yeah. Definitely.
Um, of course, here, so I had mentioned here he was likely promoted to president so that Spiro Agnew could not burn down the White House. I stand by
Hmm.
that because Nixon would not have to resign. Nixon would not be forced to resign if Agnew was vice president. I still stand by that.
Yes. Yep.
In some ways, it's kind of like what you saw in the last election cycle with Trump and Pence. Sure,
Oh yeah.
we could impeach Trump, but do we want Mike Pence to be president? Which
Yeah.
is what
It's just kind of
a lot of Democrats ask themselves that.
yep. A big it's kind of just like a lose-lose situation, honestly, one of those.
Exactly. He actually turned down the Detroit Lions and the Green Bay Packers of the NFL to pursue law, to pursue a law degree.
Wow.
So he ended up going to Yale
Hmm.
Law, and end up, and I think he ended up coaching football there as well. Um, he also spent a summer working at Yellowstone.
Nice.
So cool. He has a lot of these guys do have cool life stories. So
They do,
they do
yeah.
cool things. Um,
Yeah, if nothing else.
of course, he was a moderate. He was he was so he's sort of like he's sort of like Harding in a way. He's moderate and not non-confrontational. Um,
Hmm.
he had an ability to reach across the aisle, which I think is why he was Minority Whip in the first place, because he was able to convey opinions from both sides.
Hmm.
Um,
Which is huge.
he tried to heal the wounds caused by the Nixon administration. However, I don't know how much he could have done. He actually ended up
Yeah.
pardoning. He ended up pardoning Richard Nixon, which
Hmm.
I believe he pardoned him too early. Um,
Yeah, I think so
I
as
think
well.
that actually really killed his presidency. I think he possibly
Oh
could have
yeah.
won re-election if he didn't do that. Um,
Hmm.
honestly, if he had waited if like let's say he got a second term, if he had waited till like the end of his second term, it would probably be more understandable. But man, he did it way too early, and it upset a lot of people because
Oh, of course, yeah. It seems very, very suspicious.
it basically set the precedence that you cannot actually get really punished for your deeds.
Hmm.
Um, He survived. He actually survived 2 separate assassination attempts in California while running for re-election in
Dang.
1976. One of
Jeez.
them was a member of the Manson family. They said that if they could killing Gerald Ford, what I think was like a divine thing or something. The other was some crazed woman. I don't remember her story as well. He's pretty well known for falling down the stairs of Air Force One that one time.
Oh no. I feel like I did see something about that. Yeah.
So of course we've seen not Gerald Ford. We've seen Joe Biden fall down the stairs.
Yeah, I was just gonna mention that.
But he did that before it was cool. Now, I will give the benefit of the doubt to Ford. Those Air Force One stairs seem kind of steep.
They do. Yeah, they seem very steep.
The thing that was bad about this one, though, is... So, for instance, Joe Biden was walking, like, up towards the plane, and I think he fell, like, 1 or 2 steps. Ford literally fell, like, down, like, half the steps. So I'll play it on screen right here. Yeah, he literally, like, busted his ass. To be fair, though, the steps, it was raining, the steps were likely wet and slippery, and the dude is wearing loafers, which are not the most...
Yeah.
Which are not the best.
Like, literally zero traction.
No.
Yeah.
So, in fairness,
Dang.
In fairness, I think a good amount of people probably would have fell over.
Yeah, probably.
It's still hilarious, though, and he got a lot of flack for it in the media because of it.
You know, that's probably most of where, like, the whole clumsy thing comes from. It was probably from that, I would imagine.
Yeah, but they really harped
that
on
and
it.
Just, you know, people are just knowing he's a football player or whatever, so it's part of the stereotype with that, I suppose, as well.
The thing is, though, old people fall. It happens sometimes.
They do, yeah.
So I do find it funny that they're trashing on him so much. Like, the 60-year-old man is falling down the set of stairs. Like, wow, because no old person has ever fallen before.
Right. Yeah.
It's like, old people fall sometimes, but that's...
Yep, it's just how it goes.
But rationality is not in the media's name, so...
no, not at all.
You gotta hype up every little detail, but, here we go. This is also around the time where the oil shortages and inflation really starts to get bad. He also presided over a raid of the Khmer Rouge, which was the regime in Cambodia at that time under Pol Pot.
Oh yeah.
I believe he raided. I think a boat of like U.S. sailors had been captured by the Khmer Rouge, like a fishing boat or something. I think it was actually a drug smuggling boat had been captured.
Could very well be.
They sent like a team to rescue the sailors. And it's like no one talks about it today, but it was kind of cool. It was cool. It wasn't cool for the Khmer Rouge, though.
True, yeah.
Though they had bigger things to worry about once Vietnam invaded.
Yes, they definitely did.
But good riddance, though, because the Khmer Rouge was, like... That's, like, one of those communist regimes where I do not mind it being overthrown.
Yeah, seriously.
Like
some of them were quite bad.
Yeah, that's one... And funny enough, it was overthrown by another communist regime, so it's fine.
Oh, nice, yeah. Oh,
so
then it's not a problem. Yeah.
Gerald Ford, I do actually tend to like him as a person. I think the media was a little harsh on him. I do think he made certain mistakes, though, that could cost him down the line. I'd probably have to rank Ford. Goodness, I'd probably have to rank him an E. It's kind of tough to rank him because I have personal sympathies for him.
Hmm.
but the pardoning of Nixon was really poor, and
Yeah, that
really
that alone is
he
a
was not able to
big
get
like.
a he was also not able to get a lot done. Um, Basically by this time, he was seen kind of as illegitimate, and people didn't really want to work with him. So
Yes, I think so.
it's unfortunate, but he does have to go kind of down on the list a bit. But
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, if we're gonna have Nixon at D tier, I can't. I'm not sure if I could put Ford in the same tier as him. That would.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay. Let's see. The 2 hours 40 minutes. I think we could probably sneak in Jimmy Carter and get out of here. Um.
Yeah, I think that's probably the best bet.
Let's see here. So yeah, Jimmy Carter. Um.
Jimmy Carter.
So this is the this is so the this is the oldest president to be alive currently. Jimmy Carter is
Hmm.
still alive. I believe he is like it. He's in his 90s, but I don't.
I think he is. Yeah.
Um. Oh god, yeah, he's 96. Oh god. Okay.
Oh my gosh! Dang.
Huh?
Dang.
So Jimmy Carter's 96 and he's still kicking.
Yeah, and he's
He's
still
still
doing stuff
active.
too.
Yeah, he's
I
still.
feel like I saw him like building something
Yeah,
fairly
that
recently.
wouldn't be.
I don't know what it was, but I was like, what?
I wouldn't be surprised. So Jimmy Carter here. Okay, so grew up in excuse me. Grew up. Yeah, you could tell. And time to end soon.
Yeah.
So Carter grew up on a farm. His dad was a peanut farmer. Um,
Hmm.
his brother Billy Carter was actually a great marketer. So Billy Carter had his own beer. I need to actually show this to you on
Man,
stream. So I didn't know
nice.
about this. So Billy Carter like marketed himself as like a redneck basically. Um,
Interesting. Yeah.
Jimmy actually did not like it
Huh.
because he than how he was portraying himself because was basically portraying himself as being a dumb redneck.
Hmm.
Yeah, but he had the Billy beer, so and
Wow.
he had like
What do you know?
and he had this truck as well. The truck is hilarious.
Oh boy, that's funny. Oh my gosh, that's hilarious. Dang. That's funny. Oh yeah, he did. Yeah. Yeah. Hmm. Nice. Hmm. Really? Dang. Yeah. Wow. Hmm. 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 Oh no. Hmm. does. Yeah. Hmm. He kind of does. Yeah. Hmm. Oh no. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah. Oh, we could do an entire stream of PragerU stuff, but that's a different time. Hmm. Gotcha. Nice. Yeah, that's a good thing. Hmm. 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 Yes, for sure. Hmm. No, not at all. Hmm. Yes. Hmm. True. Yeah. Hmm. Oh yeah. Hmm. Yeah. Hmm. It's nothing. Oh yeah. Not even close. Did you? I don't know if you saw the video, but there was a video going around of someone who was putting it in like a plastic, like Walmart bag. I'm like, oh my gosh. I was like, man, natural selection is not working fast enough. Jeez. Yeah. Or like, yeah, yeah, it's gonna be super bad. And like, people were saying like, someone should just start selling like styrofoam coolers or something for people to like carry gas in. Oh my gosh. Yeah, it'd be terrible. If you don't know, it essentially dissolves styrofoam. So yeah. Oh yeah. Yep. It's so weird. Yeah. I mean, it was the same thing at the beginning of the pandemic with toilet paper and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think so. Huge, yeah. Hmm. Yep. Yes. Yeah, he's still doing stuff.
Biden that was
Hmm.
circulating. Um, that I I don't know what lens they used for that photo because like I think you've seen it, but like
Yeah.
it makes the Bidens look like way bigger
Yeah,
than
that's
them
right.
because
Yeah, that's a
I believe
cursed photo.
yeah, because the lens is like super inversed or something like that,
Yeah.
and it's kind of yeah, it's cursed as fuck actually.
Yeah, it's bad.
It
It's
look
sort of like a fisheye lens, but not really. Oh, that's funny.
I know it's so cursed. Like I don't know what the fuck they were thinking when they took that photo.
Yeah, it's hilarious.
God, I don't even want to look at it anymore. Um, Carter, he's a peanut farmer. He's probably the last American, like United States president I respect on a personal basis.
Honestly, yeah, I agree with that.
Because even like Obama, I think is just still a piece of shit in some ways. So,
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Carter. I like Carter, but he's probably an E as well. Unfortunately, so,
Yeah, I think so. Yep.
I like him, but there's a lot of bad shit that happens, and there's
Hmm.
not a lot he could do.
Yeah, exactly. He was dealt a pretty bad hand.
Okay, but I think we'll leave it off there. We got 6 presidents left, and I bet you those 6
Yeah.
alone will take like 2 hours to talk about.
Yeah, seriously.
I mean, think about it. We went from Wilson to Carter, and I think that took like 3 hours. So
Yeah, just about.
yeah, so certainly good. All right, but
Yeah, definitely.
I think that'll do it.
Awesome.
Yeah, 2 hours 52 minutes as of looking at this. Holy hell!
Nice.
And it looks like the audio actually stayed on this time. I'm gonna check the OBS one more
Yes,
time.
finally.
Yep, it did.
Good
Holy fuck!
thing.
That's actually amazing. So I
Sweet. Well, maybe
so
we'll get some more
I will keep
post views at that point.
yeah. Yeah, I end up unlisting the first part due to the audio issue, so hopefully here
Yeah.
I'll keep this one public so people can view it readily.
Yeah, because
Um,
I really hope that people interact and like share their opinions and stuff too.
I
Because I'm just curious.
I am interested in the feedback because a part of me is like, oh, this list is great, and then a part of me is like, oh, dude, they're gonna
Yeah,
tear this thing apart. You know?
yeah, exactly.
So,
Because I mean, there's definitely personal bias involved,
oh yeah,
so it would be really interesting to like see other opinions and stuff on some of these.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think we'll call it there though. Of course,
Sweet.
it's always a pleasure. Um,
Yeah,
we'll end up
absolutely.
releasing a part 3, so that'll probably take place sometime next week. It's kind of insane
Yes,
to
I
me that
believe
this is a
so.
3-part thing,
I
but
know. Yeah, I didn't expect it to be, but hey, I'm here for it.
yeah. Uh, anyone that's still in the stream, thank you guys for watching. Have a good night, guys.
Yeah, have a good one.
Alrighty.